during Christmas. She was wearing a mask, but it was, full with people.
It's a highly contagious disease. This is what happens.
Yeah.
I'm just glad people are admitting that they get it, because for a while there, it was so stigmatized. Like people would act like you had, like you were
right.
That you had definitely done something so terrible in order to get it. And I'm like, no, nobody gets made fun of because they've got a cold or the flu. It's just out there and people get it, right?
Yeah.
So, and then people weren't telling that they had it.
All right, we're streaming live on YouTube, and we're ready to go whenever you are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we're missing whatever.
I just got off the phone. He's coming in.
What's that?
I just got off the phone with him. He's coming in.
Okay.
All right, well, let's go on. So, okay, so where are we here? It's 9 o'clock on the button.
Email account or something. Don't forget it that way.
Sharon, you have yourself not on mute.
I don't know.
Getting on the
I don't
computer.
see the Wednesday, March 3rd at 9 o'clock for our special council meeting regarding the strategic plan. So can we call, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And Guido, you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Abbott,
Here.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Here.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kraft, Mayor Corradino.
Here.
Quorum is
Okay.
present, Mr. Mayor.
Perfect. Let's get started. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance and then we'll get into the discussion item. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
And to
Hello.
the
Republic, which is one nation,
God,
Liberty.
justice for all.
Okay. Yossi, you want to pick
Yeah.
up where we?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so just want to make a note, Councilmember Kraft has joined. All right, I'm going to share screen. Guido, can you let me share screen? So we last left the meeting. Council it was suggested that everyone kind of send me their ideas so that I can work on putting together proposed things, new proposed things into our list. We had basically gotten into, we were on organizational excellence and financial stability category. And as you can tell here on this column, we got as far as 110 and providing, timeline of completion target year dates. And so then you'll see on this table, I've highlighted in aqua some suggestions that the different council members made and that I feel would fall under this category for further discussion. And then we can continue on through vetting each of these things and setting timeframes if we're going to keep or take out if we feel it, we can take out. So with that said, one of the recommendations that Councilmember Hokumer submitted was establishing criteria for staged reopening of village facilities, municipal center, concerts, programs, festivals, and events, and prepare communications material relating to each stage for proactive communications over the reopening period. So her thoughts on that was that we get a jump start and already commit to paper how we are going to roll out the post-pandemic openings of everything, what's going to trigger what, and then prepare in advance of all that the communications materials so that when something happens, we don't have any lag time on communicating those openings to residents, that we kind of have all that already on the side waiting to put out. Any comments, concerns?
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, I guess we got to do that soon, right?
Yeah, I would do that like now. I'm just gonna put that for, immediate.
It's definitely a one-year objective, and I say it just because we saw, for example, in the case of the reopening of the farmers market to foot traffic, they made the decision to do it, but they didn't have the sandwich boards and the social media running. There was some delay in getting the messaging out, and so people were taken by surprise. So in order to avoid that taken by surprise as we reopen, or concern that we're doing it without adhering to a process and procedure that includes criteria, just like we close things down based on criteria, I think we should have each department establish those criteria, submit them to management for approval, and then have the communications people pre-load graphic design and communication strategy and tactics so that it reopens in an organized fashion.
If there's no objections or concerns, then we'll go ahead and put that in.
No, that's good.
Okay. Next one was a coordinated public engagement campaign that solicits input on matters of concern for residents and expectations. We kind of talked about that a little bit, of how we might do some kind of public engagement exercise that gives residents an opportunity to give feedback on what they think should be part of the strategic plan, and or like what that resident dashboard should look like. So I think that was just trying to capture. We had this appear 1.6, develop a citizen engagement campaign to determine what data would be meaningful for a community dashboard. But she had taken it a little further with trying to solicit input on like strategic plan things, not just the dashboard things. So that's
Are we envisioning more like an Inspire Pinecrest like effort where we figure out what people's priorities for the upcoming several years is? I thought that was really successful, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought Inspire was really successful. And interestingly, I think I may have mentioned this to some of you. I went to a Florida City County Management Association virtual conference, and they had this really awesome software package that allows for virtual meetings, like where people, it shows actually tables and people can click and sit at a table and have these, little powwows, kind of the same exercise of what we physically did in Inspire Pinecrest. We could do this virtually now if we wanted to pursue that. I know that Mayor, you and I had talked about maybe doing some of those exercises when we get into discussing potential changes to the development regulations for the commercial corridor. So I don't know if, all this kind of has to, should happen around the same time, and we can come up with different, maybe things to engage the residents on. And it could be partially on land development questions we might have, partially on just general, what are your thoughts? Could we do better? We can come up with proposed questions, maybe dust off the old citizen survey and maybe do just one, or two big virtual Inspire citizen engagement efforts by the use of that software, if we wanted to do it virtually as opposed to in person.
Yeah, I think that would be, I would love to get back to some in-person stuff, but I don't know if we can. I think it's also important to see if the public's attitudes have changed towards any of the existing issues, or if there are any new issues that come up. I kind of doubt, there's probably going to be some things that are just generated through us. Like one of my particular issues is the re-examining of the land use on US 1, particularly since, for whatever reasons that the county's, trying to increase density kind of in a very broad way on the corridor, and the coming bus rapid transit project, that may not reach anybody's radar, right? I don't know if any citizens are going to say, hey, relook at land use on US 1, but that may be something that we initiate as a council, just because it's a train coming down the tracks, as I'd say.
Can I just mention something based
Yes.
on experience? If at all possible for us to hold out for an in-person meeting, I'm just seeing virtual fatigue in the school community. Last night, our amazing police department did a virtual crime watch meeting for my group, which is like 40 plus people who are very involved. And I didn't have one neighbor show up, and I had 3 people that I invited on the side to try to get them into the loop of Crime Watch. I just think people are burnt out with virtual interface, and if at all possible, if we can just wait a little bit longer to have any kind of engagement.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that goes into as we start to figure out how we come back and when we come back. I mean, how long do you think when do you want to do it, Yossi? Do you think it's something that's imperative we do in the spring, or do you do it in the
Depends
first
on
year?
how, I mean, I think based on the council's workshop for the land development regulation stuff, I know that any type of changes, we definitely wanted to kind of get that public feedback on. So, you know, I just don't know what council's timing is. You know, we can kind of, let me see what you guys had talked about. Let me just make a note here so that we are still talking about this. Let me just, so I can follow along where we're at. Oops, hold on. That's not what I meant to do. We talked about, let me see where that was, land review. Oh, we didn't give a time frame. So the land review suggestion you had made, Mayor, last time we didn't set a time frame. So it really, I think, should coincide, whatever it is we do. We definitely want to include citizen input and solicit that input, especially on that particular process, I think. So it's on you guys if you want to, how fast your plans were on looking at land development issues in the corridor. If it was more, you know, over the spring, then I think it will require some kind of virtual system, because I don't think we'll be out of the woods until the fall easily.
Well, my ideas were we can have it on a flexible time schedule. I thought we could get it. I thought we could hash it all out through the spring. Obviously, we don't want to talk about too much relative to voting on you know, changing land development code during the summer, since everybody's gone. Maybe this year more people will be gone than last year, but we could even vote on it as early as or bring it to the council as early as November. I say you probably don't want to bring anything like that in December, or you start it up in January or February and bring it to the council then. So, but that's it doesn't really matter. If we wanted to do it quick, we would start working on it this spring, but it can be done at any time.
I mean, as far as doing virtual or non-virtual, I think I would suggest that we play it by ear. I think one of the things that made the Inspire Pinecrest so successful was that we put a lot of effort in getting the word out to the residents through these big posters that, you know, like these little billboards we put all over the village. We put messaging boards. And so we really went beyond our normal course of getting the word out about the fact that we were going to do that community engagement exercise. And so as much as I agree that there's a lot of fatigue, I think that just that topic of community engagement and letting residents have a say, I think as long as we give them ample time and notice about how the process will work and the virtual, and because Inspire originally was so successful, I'm hopeful that we'll have a good turnout. And then if we don't, you know, nothing says we can't go back to doing it the old fashioned way where we send, you know, a citizen survey to everybody's house. You know, we can always double back and then abandon that approach if that doesn't really give us the engagement numbers that we would like to see. I think the last time when we did Inspire, we had like, I don't know, it was like 200, 300 people at that meeting. So that would be what I would aim for, you know, is having at least that much.
I think the virtual is here to stay forever. You'll run it at the same time you run an in-person meeting. I think that we're always gonna need to have a virtual component of our meetings where people can watch them in real time at home and comment if they need to from home. While doing, even if we did an Inspire or a council meeting or any type of council workshop, I think there's always got to be a virtual component to it. It would be a shame to lose all that.
Okay, well, I've kind of combined everything, the one that we originally had, and then Council Member Del Prado's suggestion. So it now would read, develop a citizen engagement campaign to determine what I'm gonna just call it inspire engagement because everybody knows what that is, and that way we can keep inspire engagement campaign to determine what data would be meaningful for a community dashboard, gauge overall public sentiment about village services, and vet ideas about the commercial corridor.
Uh-huh. I like that.
Okay, so, all right, so this is done, and then, hold on, let me just do this, or,
Well, hold on. I don't know. I don't think we should mix. I mean, the commercial village services and the commercial corridor. I mean, the commercial corridor is in and of itself an issue. I
why don't we
wouldn't,
call it village character?
well, even in commercial corridor, I wouldn't mix. I think land use and zoning on the commercial corridor is a standalone item. And you don't, it's going to draw a lot of fire in the first place. I wouldn't mix it with any other topic.
So
Other, hey, you want to look at this type of thing, but the answer will be probably no.
So you don't want to include commercial corridor concepts in the Inspire engagement campaign?
I would do a separate workshop specifically for land use and development because it's so technical. And because it doesn't resonate with so many people, I would think that an Inspire, particularly if there's an easy virtual component of it, an Inspire to get sentiment about the village, sentiment about village services, community character, dashboard questions, very much umbrella topics, would be one type of session. A separate session would be specifically on land use.
Yeah, I almost see that the Inspire process as being those broad topics, right? And then one of drilling down into a component of one of those topics may be the commercial core.
Develop engagement campaign to,
For instance, I think the commercial corridor is even a subset of the workshop we're having, next week, the comp plan and zoning changes, right? So it's a big part, but just a component of whatever we've got on the list for that meeting. And by the way, I think it lasts. We're just at the beginning of this process, not the end. So I don't think you can make any changes to the corridor in the near term. And it's got to be workshopped, and there's got to be professionals, and there's got to be all types of consensus building.
okay, I just put it down there, so we'll wordsmith the other one as we get down to that category. So I put a placeholder on that. So now this one is reads, develop an Inspire engagement campaign to determine what data would be meaningful for a community dashboard and gauge overall public sentiment about village services. Okay.
Right.
All right. Then, okay, the next one. Develop a communication strategy that furthers the message that Pinecrest is a government focused on serving you. So our overall communication strategy, as we've put it together, aligns with our strategic categories, and we try to always come back to that. Council member Del Prado felt that it would be helpful to also kind of create, further our brand to the something that has a message, and obviously we will play around with the message, but that it's about government focused on this, on serving you. So it's really just honing in further on that brand messaging for the village. Or if you don't want to get that specific, we can come up with a development strategy that furthers the village's brand, and that we can kind of explore what does that mean and how do we build on our brand? Like, what is our current brand, or what, and can we improve on that brand, and how do we communicate and start going in that direction so that we continue to build on our brand, overall brand. Like, what is our brand currently? And do we need to improve on that? Maybe it might be, if you don't want to get into the specifics of the messaging part yet.
I think, I think we do a great job at branding the village. So maybe I should have fleshed that out a little more. Don't get hung up on it. I think we covered it.
I I think it's good to advance the, whatever the specific brand we have now, and to evolve it into something that this group is most comfortable with.
I mean, that might be something that we can build into the Inspire Engagement campaign. We can actually look at what do people think is our, like, how would they describe our brand as an organization? I'd be curious to see what they think. What is our brand? Like, how would they describe the village government? Could be a good exercise, because that would tell us what people's, is our messaging on point as far as branding is concerned? So
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Forgive me, I was just going back to the charter, and the charter says the government is created for the governed, but governed didn't sound right. So I was just kind of borrowing from that and saying, this is the village that's here to serve you. Or focus on serving you.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of those questions you may not want to hear the answer to. Hey, what do you think of the village?
well, I put here in this one, develop an Inspire Engagement campaign to determine what data would be meaningful for community dashboard, engage overall public sentiment about the village services to hone the branding message, so that we know, what are people thinking about us? We can try to kind of build in like what, just to further improve our marketing efforts as a community. If you guys like that change, are you?
That captures it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's the only thing that's taking me back a little is the terminology. It's the idea of a strategy to communicate a specific message. It doesn't really jive, but I like the idea of feeling out, engaging where our brand is and what the public sentiment is about the brand, and seeing whether there's opportunities to hit certain messages that we feel are important to communicate, like we serve you. But I think we should go through the exercise first of focus grouping before we determine what the messages should be, so to speak. I don't think Shannon's wrong. I think she's probably right about it. It's just, I would probably do that. There might be like 3 or something, right?
No,
That
I
are,
think what I was trying to say is that we should seek input so that we are actually serving, we're carrying out our residents' wishes. So that's why I put that little sentence in there, Yosi.
Right. I think that would be the gauging of the overall public sentiment about our services, whether we're meeting expectations or not. I do think, though, there is some value in kind of gauging how they view us from a branding and messaging, communications perspective. We can always improve public sentiment about things if we know how they feel about those sentiments. And then if we're not meeting expectations, how we tweak our messaging from a communication standpoint can improve our brand overall. So I do think that kind of correlates with everything. So if you're okay with the highlighted addition, just develop an Inspire Engagement campaign to determine what data would be meaningful for a community dashboard, engage overall public sentiment about village services to improve the branding message.
let's acknowledge that we might engage in an Inspire type event and find out that it's not just about messaging, but that we actually have some deficiency in our services, and we're actually not meeting an expectation that the community has for ourselves, in which case that's not a branding message problem, that's an actual operational problem. So let's figure out language that allows us to say we want to gauge, sentiment about village services to improve deficiencies therein, or engage in public messaging about, our operations successes and services, or something like that. Just because I don't want to assume that we're doing it all right, and the only problem is people don't know that we're doing it all right, because we might be doing something wrong.
Okay, so it's develop an Inspire campaign to determine what data would be meaningful for a community dashboard, engage overall public sentiment about village services to improve deficiencies, or engage in messaging to address lack of information.
to identify deficiencies and engage in
To incorporate feedback.
right, incorporate feedback,
Incorporate feedback.
identify deficiencies, and engage in messaging opportunities or something like that, or branding opportunities or something like that.
I think you can eliminate identify deficiencies and just say incorporate feedback, because if the feedback is that we have deficiencies,
Right.
right? So just to incorporate feedback, if you think.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I don't think we're going to have any deficiencies.
Of course not.
Oh, no.
Perfection is widely acknowledged.
Okay, I think we're good on the, let me just go over. We have assigned target year completion timeframes to this. Organizational excellence and financial stability. I'm just going to read each out loud so we all know. Review the extraordinary expenditure mitigation set aside of $3 million by 2023-24 to ensure in line with inflation. Review the financial policies by 2022 and every 3 years thereafter. Develop an ADA remediation plan for the website that includes an analysis and recommendation of what should be updated, a breakdown of man hours necessary, and anticipated timelines. Review monthly departmental reports and assess what data points should be reported to council. Develop a community dashboard to improve transparency and efficiency and better inform the policy decision-making process. Develop an inspire engagement campaign to determine what data would be meaningful for a community dashboard, engage overall public sentiment about village services, and incorporate feedback. Decrease the financial gap in the Parks and Recreation Department by attaining an 80% revenue to expenditure ratio. Conduct an in-depth financial analysis for Pinecrest Gardens that reviews revenue and expenditure trends and develops a cost recovery plan. Facilitate a comprehensive review and cost benefit assessment of the Miami-Dade County Transportation Planning Organization by the Miami-Dade County Transportation Planning Organization of the village's freebie pilot program to determine what operational changes would be recommended, if any, to achieve improved outcomes. Study first mile, last mile transportation options to serve the proposed BRT system. And establish criteria for staged reopening of village facilities, municipal center, concerts, programs, festivals, and events, and prepare communications materials related to each stage for proactive communications over the reopening period.
I have a question. Since we've looked at the freebie and the first mile, last mile stuff, those things would go parallel with re-examining land use in the corridor too. Do you want to just add that in there, or put the
land use I have under residential character and community enhancement?
Okay, just so we know they're all
right. I almost felt like these two here were more like transportation oriented, but we don't have a transportation element as a category. Like in some of the strategic plans that I saw, they had like transportation, transit, and pedestrian, like just mobility as one separate category. And so I was going to kind of mention that might be something we want to do, because I almost felt like security and pedestrian safety really doesn't, the two things that the security, give me 1 second, I'm sorry. Mom, I'm in a meeting, I cannot speak to you. Is there an emergency? She's butt dialing me, I think. Sorry about that. Security and so yeah, like I don't know, security to me was more police oriented, crime kind of oriented, and then the pedestrian safety, I didn't know where that correlation was. I think they just put two things that really didn't match together.
I would support creating a separate category that's a transportation category, putting pedestrian safety in there along with anything else that has to do with transportation, anything else that was considered as part of our transportation master plan, I think should be in a separate category. And then security is
like its own thing, right?
The police department. Unless we determine that we have a security issue in our parks and therefore need to do something in our parks. But I think security is an okay word, but it's always seemed shoehorned.
Is
Yeah.
everybody okay with that? Just creating another category that talks more about I think one of the things I had was mobility or transportation. So we could just call it transportation element.
It's called transportation because that's what the master plan is called, right?
Okay. So everything that's going to be in red as we go forward, we'll switch and put into a new transportation element, and we'll create a new category, strategic category, key outcome category. Okay. All right. Okay. So then we're good with finishing and wrapping up organizational excellence and financial stability. The one thing we have not spoken about, but I don't know that we want to get into at this point, is the community dashboard outcome metrics. I had thrown some ideas in here. Do you want to talk about outcome metrics now, or wrap up all the objectives and then double back and look at outcome metrics? How do you guys want to proceed?
Are we on dashboard now?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Right now, we just finished the strategic objectives that fall under that category of organizational excellence and financial stability. The next thing that would be like, what metrics are we going to have as part of the community dashboard? But I'm not sure if we want to talk about that now, or if you guys want to just focus on objectives, get through all the objectives that we're going to have, and then double back and look at metrics as like a separate exercise.
I think we should go through the objectives, look at the dashboard metrics separately.
I agree.
Specifically because one of our strategic objectives is determining what the dashboard metrics should be. And there's going to be a whole bunch of input from a whole bunch of different stakeholders, not just us, into that column.
Okay.
So I can see why, from a matter of record keeping, as we go through, if somebody has a dashboard metric they want to propose, stick it in that.
Right, we could put in ideas here, but maybe, yeah, we can maybe go.
That's
through
an
the same
idea. From my
exercise of-
perspective, that's a under construction column,
Right,
which
Okay.
won't even be finalized really until the end of, we get to the end of that item in the objectives.
right. Okay, so moving on then to pedestrian, security. And then anything that's pedestrian mobility, transportation oriented that's in here, we will shift to a transportation element, but we can review everything together. Okay. So first, the ones that are not highlighted are the existing ones. So we can, we're going to assess each one to see if we want to continue or abandon those particular objectives. And then the ones in blue again are the suggestions from different council members. So the first one is raise visibility for the police department through a proactive crime prevention campaign that involves increased education of the general public and work with residents to establish more crime watch groups throughout the community, aiming to decrease burglaries and property loss. Are we interested in continuing this?
That seems like it's now been incorporated into the general operations of the police department. I've noticed, for example, as new topics come up, we now have a system where new communications and social media gets shared. I've noticed the lock it or lose it stuff is now on our signage. The crime watch exists. We have somebody in charge of it. They're active. So it seems to me like that's moved into the normal order of business category and as achieved, and is now just something we continue to do.
Right. I would agree with that statement. So in that vein, are we okay with crossing this particular objective out?
I am. I think it's a great big old check mark.
Yeah.
Fine with that.
Okay. And there are other things that are similar to this, but tweaks that messaging as we go forward. Okay. So I just dropped, let me just take this out so we keep track. Identify and assess innovative technological tools and strategies to enhance ability to fight crime in the village.
Good one.
Except it's so vague, it's almost impossible to understand what it's asking us to do. I mean, is it directing the staff and the chief of police to let us know if something interesting comes up that he wants to put in the budget? That once again seems to be a normal order of business. I think this was referencing vaguely the license plate readers. So I would just say, let's finish all of the phases of the license plate readers.
That was one of the things here, all phases of the license plate reader program.
I mean, I think we had it in 3 phases.
We also had talked about, and by the way, and we are doing it, was that ring technology. I mean, there's been other discussions offline between myself and the chiefs. Like, can we put, you know, aside from the license plate readers, is there the ability to put, you know, cameras throughout the village? What would that entail? The cost entail? Is it solar powered options? Because some of it is really can get expensive. So we typically look at those issues anyway internally. I think at some point you're right, to connect to just the license plate reader specifically. And we've already did the pilot program. So now it was about taking it, and now we've done phase 2. So now it's about, you know, moving that particular
I think it's a matter of
that, and maybe even looking for, once those phases are completed, you could potentially consider adding additional locations for additional license plate readers going forward, if you guys wanted to expand that program further beyond the initial 3 phases that we recommended. So you could look at a long-term approach of evaluating after the 3 phases are completed, evaluating if the village wants to pursue further expansion of the license plate reader program.
Yeah, I mean, I think we finished the 3rd. I think the objective would be to finish the 3rd phase, then to ask the command staff of the police department to analyze the data over the past X number of years. By the time we finish, we'll have had cameras in place for 3.5, I think, years, maybe 4 years. So we should have some data to evaluate its effectiveness, to touch base with our surrounding communities that also have LPRs, like Coral Gables, see what kind of data they have showing the effectiveness of the program, and then determine whether we want to expand it. So it's 2021. We have some money in the budget this year. Do we have money in the budget this year to do phase 3?
Yes.
We do. So we'll finish them.
So that will happen.
We'll finish them over the course of this year. Evaluate the next year, which would be 2022. So ideally, that would be completed by the end of 2022 into 2023, right?
Correct. So 27, okay, 2.7 would be completed by 2021. And then if there's an additional proposed goal having to do with the license plate reader, is at some point evaluate the license plate reader program after phase 3 construction to assess if expansion of additional technology is recommended.
Mm-hmm.
Yossi, I'm totally blind. Is it possible just to like, zoom in a little bit just on this section? 'Cause
Yeah.
I process by reading and I'm like having trouble.
I'm with you.
Hey!
I'm showing my age, but sorry. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is what we're talking right now. About what we're talking about right now is basically doing away with the identify and assess innovative technological tools and strategies to enhance ability to fight crime in the village. And we're going to be focusing on completing the construction of the license plate reader. And after that is completed, assessing whether we would like to expand and add technology further in the village. So the shorter term would be in 2.7, which we anticipate will be done by 2021. And then 22.8 would be something that we would likely complete in 2023. So we would give, time for the final program to kind of work for at least a year before we then evaluate the program.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Sounds good.
Okay, so with that, then I'm going to take this out, identify and assess innovative technological tools. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so we're taking that out. Okay, so now the new one, complete design and construct plan in cooperation with Palmetto Bay for improvements to the intersection at Southwest 136th Street and Oak Cutler Road that includes a bike lane along 136th Street. Technically, it's not a bike lane, it's a shared use path now. So this has already been designed. It's designed as a shared use path. And the
Right.
timing is, it's ongoing in the sense that obviously a shared use path is going to get built. The intersections are currently under design at the county, and there's no mention in here about the bridge. So this is already in progress. We're not doing the construction of it, so I don't know why. I would suggest that this is no longer our objective. We've achieved what we were going to do, and it's already in progress. So
Yeah.
it's going to be built.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the only one that is still, I guess, not completely ironed out and confirmed is the improvements to the intersection. So they're proposed, there's plans being done, but that still hasn't kind of completely gotten through the entire process at the county.
But we are not the ones who are designing that, correct? That's not
Correct.
our work.
Not our work.
So I would say we got the project going, and now the county's going to do it. So at this point, it's just a staff follow-up as the project update every month.
Right. So everyone okay with our removing this particular project as completed or achieved?
Yes.
Yes, it's all but implemented, right?
Correct. It's in the process of being done. So I would suggest we can take that off.
Right.
Okay. Hearing no objection, I will do so. Okay. Let me just take this down here. Okay. Investigate implementation of new pedestrian safety amenities such as decorative street lighting initiatives and in pavement crosswalk lighting. We've done this. It's ongoing, quite frankly. We've added some. We're in the process of adding in pavement crosswalk lighting at the schools. And so wherever we can, we're doing it. I don't know how formal you guys want that process to be.
I think one of the reasons it was in the strategic plan was because decisions like what were they going to look like, what was going to be our particular brand, what color was it going to be, what color cement was it going to be, and stuff like that was an issue. But I don't know now that it's something that we do and we have an established look.
The only thing in here that I would just thinking how in the past, so the decorative street lighting initiatives, to me, when you start talking about new pedestrian safety amenities and talking at the same time about decorative street lighting initiatives, that to me starts talking about street lights.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not we want to explore street lights and adding street lights on specific corridors. I could tell you anecdotally over the last 15 years that we've done citizen surveys, every year, the number of people that have been in favor of adding street lights has continuously gone up. The struggle for council has always been how adding street lights might change the overall character of the village. So I don't know if that's something we want to vet further when we do Inspire Pinecrest as a potential topic for, discussion and more community input. I can tell you, and I'm sure you know this, when you drive around Pinecrest, there's plenty of people who basically have added lights along their own landscape to make it safer because it is so dark in Pinecrest at night. So it's almost being done without a formal street lighting program, you know?
Right.
But then you have some parts that are really, really dark. And so I don't know if there's any, I think that's where it was. Investigate implementation of new pedestrian safety amenities such as decorative street lighting initiatives, but like, what does that really mean?
definitely
How do
take
we
the
investigate that?
I would take the in pavement crosswalk lighting out. I would say, I would make a note that we probably want to include that topic, street lighting, in the Inspire Pinecrest to gauge how people feel about it. It is still quite controversial for some people. I have heard people, even people who generally are not in favor of streetlights at major intersections, don't have an issue with it.
Which we already are doing that. That council has already directed that we look to incorporate lights at the intersection. So that's already doing it.
Right.
This
So
goes beyond
feel
that.
it out. I would feel it out.
I'm having a flashback. Wasn't this the topic at the Inspire that was both, the number one need and the thing that people want at least? It was like an absolute.
In the Inspire, because it was real-time input kind of thing, that came out. But when we've done the mail-in citizen survey, we have over the years, when you look at the numbers and the statistics, it's continuously creeped more towards in favor of it than not.
Right.
So
The last survey, it finally got 53% or something like that were in favor of street lighting, which was, I think, the year before I was elected. So it would have been like 2014, 2015.
And that's a lot more people than was at Inspire too.
Right. I gotta tell you, my gut instinct is you just keep asking the question, because at this point it's really still black and white.
of
Yeah,
comprehensive.
who wants to deal with a 50-50 problem if you don't have to?
I mean, that's one where that's just baiting the bear, I think.
Such as street lighting.
Frankly.
Yes.
Michigan.
Let's work on the 80-20 problems before.
Major.
Unless somebody's got a burning desire to.
This is, okay, I'm just throwing this out there just for you to talk. Investigate general public sentiment regarding implementation of a comprehensive pedestrian safety amenity, such as a street lighting initiative along major arterial roads.
I think there are logical places for lighting, and maybe like our safe routes to school programs or safe routes to parks programs, we need to light those places, right? So for instance, maybe it's smart to have them over the sidewalks on the roads within a half a mile from a park or a school. How far into the neighborhoods do you get with this stuff is another question, right? I mean, for instance, we've kind of run into this with sidewalks. Do you need on every street? No, you don't need lights on every street either. Some of these things, deep, low volume traffic streets deep into the village may not need a sidewalk nor a light. But if you've got a higher capacity road, you may need both, unless a neighbor wants to petition to bring a sidewalk or a light, and then in which case we could probably do that.
Assess general public sentiment regarding implementation, regarding
How about just comprehensive?
pedestrian safety amenities,
Mhm.
such as street lighting initiatives along major arterial roads or within a radius, a specific radius of public parks. And we can kind of vet that through our Inspire Pinecrest. Do
Right.
we have to put that as an objective, or do we want to just make that one of our, things to seek input on when we do Inspire, and not necessarily make this an objective?
Yeah, I think that's a question to put in Inspire Pinecrest. That's stuff we want to ask about for Inspire Pinecrest.
Agree, everybody? Inspire
Yeah.
Pinecrest question?
Yep.
Yes.
Hold on, let me just keep track of everything. Sorry, I'm just making notes here.
In case anyone's listening, does FPL still have that program that they'll put a light on your pole on your,
Yeah,
I think they do.
not, I mean, I don't think they're very attractive, but in case anyone is interested in looking into that.
I got
I
one
can
of my.
tell you that at one point, Pinecrest by the Sea had contacted me that they might be interested in doing decorative streetlights in their whole district. So that there are potentially areas that are, interested in doing that. David says, he's texting me. He said, separate street lighting for cars and pedestrian lighting. In other words, that there's different types of lighting. Some is for pedestrian, meant more for pedestrian safety, and the other ones is more for cars. And some streets pedestrian lighting is all that's needed, not necessarily for traffic safety considerations. Okay. Okay, initiate a pilot program with lighting options to improve visibility at key intersections. This is already underway. We could set a year to be completed time frame. So instead of initiating, I would put implement. Is it going to be a pilot program, or are we comfortable that we're going to do lighting at key intersections?
Yeah, I mean, how do we define a key intersection?
I think we start with the ones that already have traffic control devices.
Everyone that has a light.
Like a mass, traffic signal intersections. Those are what I would consider the larger. And then once those get done, we can always expand on that further in other intersections that maybe don't have traffic.
Why do you need them at those intersections, do you think?
Again, it's to improve safety. Right now you come up to those and some have lights, some don't. So it was like low hanging fruit. I think everyone is a little shy on pulling the trigger on putting street lights. So I think this was like that first step at adding lighting. And I think everybody kind of felt comfortable doing it at those major intersections.
Well,
There's some four-way stop intersections, for example, that have been dangerous in the past that might be good candidates for better lighting of the stop signs, for example.
Okay, let me ask a question. What's the safety problem? A vehicular problem like accidents, which we should be able to figure out through the police department, or is it a pedestrian problem like accidents that we should, or fear to walk on the road because there's no light? And if it's a pedestrian problem, what's it matter if we light the intersection and we haven't lit the route that they're taking from
what I have gathered, and you all would probably have similar input, is we have a lot of seniors that when they're driving around town, they have difficulty when they come up to different roads. Everything is so dark in some areas that they're the ones that at least I've seen input or heard input from. If I remember correctly, Councilman McDonald, when he would go door to door, we get a lot of that feedback, but mostly from the older residents that they couldn't see the intersections when they would come up on intersections. The issue is that, I think that it would be their preference that we would light up every corner. Because I know that when you come up to a certain roads at night, you don't see everything, even though you have the reflectors on the on our street signs. And I don't know that we want to get into lighting the entire village. So that's where I think we kind of started heading towards more focusing on major intersections. We can also add four-way stops.
Why don't we make an objective to study and determine where lighting options at key intersections is called for, establish criteria for evaluating whether or not lighting is called for at key intersections. And then by the end of this year, And then we can discuss it as a council and decide whether in a future strategic objective is to actually implement it. But it sounds like to me, we don't even agree on how we define the nouns in the objective at this point.
So the criteria for evaluating the need for future lighting at key intersections.
Yeah, I would almost do a safety analysis, right? Where you would figure out where are the most dangerous intersections for whatever we're looking at, and where would lights solve those problems? So for instance, if there is a particular intersection where there's a ton of accidents,
I don't know that there are. I don't think that there are. I can tell you, I don't, because I would get that feedback. And for any of the chiefs listening, I don't think that there are, from a traffic safety perspective, any issues where we have a recurring intersections with recurring accidents. There are.
I kind of like you see it is that people are trying to drive and they can't see. Not like there's a ton of accidents out there that may result from this type of thing. But it's almost a preventive measure. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the intersections, right? Because I think the complaints, well, you say we get complaints that people drive up to an intersection, they can't see it. But just your headlights on a stop sign is going to identify the stop sign. I found these guys that drive into these dark neighborhoods, right, with no streetlights at all. You can't even see you're on the road at some places.
Yeah, I mean, the lighting problems, for example, it's not that you pull up to 104th and 67th Avenue and you can't see the intersection. You can see the intersection. The problem is, you pull up on a four-way stop with no lighting that doesn't happen to have a house nearby that's lit itself up like a cruise ship. And you don't have enough reflection in the geography of some of these intersections to clearly read the street signs. And because we have a community without any standardized way to even signal the numeration of the homes, you frequently, you can't read the house numbers. You can't tell, where the pavement ends and the swale grass starts. I mean, it's very, very dark, but I don't know that lighting up key intersections addresses any of those concerns that people have, nor do I know necessarily that the village wants to fix it and simply wants to acknowledge this is the character of our community, right? I don't know, but again, the criteria question is there.
The other thing is, how does lighting contribute to people's feelings of safety or not?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know when I come in to go to the jazz series at night and I'm coming down Killian towards Pinecrest Gardens, there are areas, especially because now our trees are starting to get really big. Mm-hmm. And so the canopy, the thicker the canopy gets, mm-hmm. Even the existing street lights that are maybe dotted along that corridor are hard to see. And so it's really dark. Like even on a full moon, you can't really see very well. And I have had cases where you have people that dart out, kind of, or you come up on somebody on a bike and you barely even saw them, you know what I mean? Because it's so pitch black. So I just,
Why don't we figure out the problem through the Inspire by asking people where they need lights and why?
Or do they need lights? Do they think it adds to safety? Do they want it from, why would they even support it? What is it that they're looking to be able to maybe go walking at night and feel safe? Is it more of a pedestrian safety aspect, or is it more of a traffic safety?
Yeah, I agree. I think that once we figure out why they want them and where they want them, or where they want them and why they want them there, then we can more adequately address the issue.
Right.
Assess resident sentiment regarding street lighting to determine if considered pedestrian safety or traffic safety. Somebody throw something at me.
How about just assess resident sentiment regarding street lighting, right?
Uh-huh.
So let's just assess resident sentiment regarding street lighting.
Okay.
And establish. Let's just create an objective of assessing resident sentiment. And so then I'm looking at established criteria.
Establish criteria for evaluating implementation, need and implementation.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to say throughout the village or at certain places in the village?
Evaluating the need and establish criteria for evaluating the need and criteria of the same. I mean, I wouldn't even say throughout the village. I wouldn't even say evaluate criteria. Street lighting, future lighting location, the need. Evaluating the need.
Assess resident sentiment regarding street lighting.
And establish criteria.
Establish criteria for possible future lighting locations. Because obviously we're not going to put it if it's not needed. So
right. No, I like that. And then, okay, so that's a 1-year deal. Do we think we can get that done by the end of 2021?
Yes.
So if we do it through that Inspire Pinecrest community engagement kind of exercise, we could try to get as much from that and then go from there.
Yeah, and then work on establishing the criteria.
Okay, improve. Okay, everybody go with that?
Yeah.
Okay, improve ADA accessibility at Veterans Wayside Park. Okay,
Yes.
so this one, hold on, let me see something real quick. What are we on? Which is this category? Okay, so this category, number 1, involves pedestrian safety aspects, but it's at a particular park. So I was kind of torn whether it should be in this category, if it should be in recreation category.
I think it's in the Parks and Recreation category.
That was one question. The other one was, we've done ADA improvements already. We've already implemented those. That's why it said achieved on here.
Mm-hmm.
So, however, I have had conversations, and you know how we're talking about redoing or doing the comprehensive master plan for the parks.
Mm-hmm.
That if you recall, some of you may know this or may recall that we did a master plan for Veterans Wayside Park when there was talk about putting a dog park there. But aside from the dog park, that obviously got a lot of opposition, there were other amenities that were part of that master plan suggestion, you know, and my question was, as we get into comprehensive master planning for the parks, is there any kind of consideration to making improvements at Veterans Wayside Park? For example, that park, again, at night is very dark. We could easily, it's a gateway park. I could make pitch for lighting, doing up lighting of the trees, make it something more attractive. We could potentially put some kind of exercise path that just allow people to walk on the perimeter, even though there is a perimeter sidewalk there, but I think people always hesitate to walk right along US 1 just because it gives you the feeling of kind of danger. Do we want to add, there was, I think, a gazebo element or an overlook element over the lake. So
don't we want to wait for the parks master plan process to conclude? Because won't that indicate to us where we have deficiencies or need? I mean, if it identifies an amenity that the village needs or has too little of, and we have a limited number of parks, then wouldn't that necessarily lead us to determine whether a particular park was the right place to put that in? I don't want to put in a walking path if we don't need any walking paths and nobody wants walking paths.
Right. Yeah, that we can do that. Definitely wait to see how that plays out and then see if there are any improvements that are merited further than what's already there at Veterans Wayside Park.
Right. I mean, as a matter of just information, if you could shoot me an email and let me know what the ADA improvements were that we finished.
I could tell you, remember we had a lawsuit and it involved our extending sidewalk to the monument area.
Mhm.
And we added ADA parking, space that
Did we move the garbage can and the bench out from the middle of the sidewalk?
we did.
Okay,
So-
I mean, so it sounds like we did what we had to do. That's a
Yeah,
check.
we've done everything that was asked of us. When this particular, that's why I have achieved on here. This was directly correlated to that lawsuit.
Then that's achieved.
So this was achieved. So it's, yeah, the question was,
Yeah.
do you all want to replace and do anything specific with veterans and direct that when we do the comprehensive master plan, just so that I know Rob's listening in on this presentation, so that it's, what was your feeling of that park? Is there anything, that you would want staff or the consultant to really take a look at as far as that park is concerned? Any issues of concern with that park?
Number one, it's a sad looking park. Number two, the only time I ever use it is when we do Veterans Day there. And I'm always terrified that a semi is going to run off of US 1 and kill all of us and all of the veterans that are sitting there on chairs. I think no one in their right mind would ever take a child to play in a park that's alongside a 10-lane highway. And so, that it gets very little use because of that. It also doesn't necessarily give a very attractive face to the village, being one of the parks that's visible from US 1. Oh, whoa. Sorry, that was something in my, not in my space. So, that's what I think about it. My question is, is that the sort of input that becomes part of the park's master plan process? Right.
Well, it just depends if we're going to add amenities. If we're not adding amenities and it's just an aesthetic issue that we want to improve aesthetics at the parks, but if there's no, we could look at whether it warrants adding amenities.
Right.
But if overall it's just meant to continue to be a wayside park, then it's just a gateway kind of, I would suggest we just beautify it. A lot of the picnic facilities already exist are kind of towards the back of the, and away from the US 1 corridor, and people do use it. They go out there and they do picnic out there and lunch out there. But it's definitely a very passive, just open space kind of feeling of a park.
I see no reason to build amenities at that park. It's very small. I don't know that we need any amenities. I just think it looks run down. The lighting is poor, and aesthetically, it's not very appealing.
Yeah, I agree. That's our worst park, and it's almost purposely so. Not to be too critical of the past, but that's a giant failure in leadership, right? In the sense that the veterans decided that they didn't want anybody to touch the park in any way, because we kept threatening them with this dog park that we couldn't seem to negotiate. So even against their self-interest, right? You can't even walk on the theoretic grassy part of that park because you'll break an ankle. But instead of let the previous council touch it and turn it into something they didn't want, they refused anybody to touch. I think we could make it a nice park for people, nice semi-passive park, without any of the dangers that it has now, without any controversy as well. So
develop a plan for aesthetic improvements to the Veterans Wayside Park.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Sure.
Okay, and that I'm going to shift over to the Parks and Recreation.
Has there ever been any discussion of fencing it in and putting a nice hedge and making it a little bit more?
There is, and I'll hobo blues because
Careful, Katie.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
That's a
there.
landmine, don't step in it. Hold on, let me just get this up
Just
here.
saying, going to your point, Anna, that people don't.
I'm with you. I'm just letting you know that the emails are already being written to you for having brought that up.
How dare you?
What is the goal, to be able to see it from US One? Like, what would be the objection to doing that?
Yeah, the issue is
The weirdest thing.
feeling that it's a gateway feature and that the original look of it lets it be enjoyed by people that are also traversing US one. And
Well,
that
that's
by
not even promoting
fencing
safety. What are we
it-
saying? Just take your eyes off the road and look at our pretty park? Like, that
Right.
doesn't even make any
100%.
sense.
Hey, you know what? It's your perception of whether US one is our front door or our back door. And I'll bet you that the vast majority of Pinecresters believe that US one is the back door to the village, right?
Right, except the city manager who thinks it's our face and we've got lipstick on a pig. Yes.
No, Katie, we got into the argument of whether, look, you just need railroad ties as a gate, or a fence, or a plexiglass wall like they have up at the golf course off the turnpike, or the Don Shula, right? Man, I'd love to relive those days. That's some of the best government we've had.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, we added the aesthetic, just looking at aesthetic improvements, long-term aesthetic improvements for the park. We'll get to the timing of that and when you want to complete that as we get to the.
I also agree with Katie. I mean, if it functions better fenced in a way, I don't see why we wouldn't explore that.
Right. I mean, if we're going to make it attractive and put down nice soft grass that's not going to kill you, but in order for somebody to feel comfortable being in the western half of the park, some sort of barrier, attractive barrier is called for. I'm on board with that.
Man, that's a disaster waiting to happen, right, Anna? I mean, think about this. Think about the crazy tragedies that you could occur. Like on Veterans Day, somebody runs a semi through that place, right? Because there's literally no barriers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I could chime in, the master plan for that park that the manager referred to earlier, one of the things it did include was a low wall. It was 2-3 foot coral rock wall along the US one side to create that barrier without creating a visual obstruction. So that's an option.
But remember, I think where a lot of that stuff came from was some really what the same places that we kind of arrived at. Hey, let's cut the roads and take the asphalt off them to make them more narrow. And if you go back to those places today, you see big giant ruts in the street because cars fall off the road because we artificially narrowed the asphalt. They don't come from a place of like a professional recommended this stuff. They come from maybe a couple council members with a personal agenda that recommended things that a professional wouldn't recommend. So we could probably throw that out.
Okay. I've just added it as aesthetic considerations. So we'll look at all those things. Okay. Next one, develop a long-term financial implementation plan for the bicycle lane projects as identified in the transportation master plan. I think this one, actually, we talk about, well, no, I think that's the only location where we talk about that. Let me just look. I think I remember seeing something there. But anyway, if we come to another one that's similar to that.
My real question is, do we actually want to do that, or do we want to keep doing what we've been doing, which has been working, which is as we go through the budget year by year, because we now have a transportation master plan, we pick components of the transportation master plan to fund each year in the budget, as opposed to a long-term financial implementation.
I think that the issue of my recollection of this conversation last year was that because these shared use lane, bicycle lane projects are multi-million-dollar projects, that unless we're able to secure grants to actually bring them to fruition, that council had considered, like, do we want to do and build in a, for example, specific bond issuance that's supported by transportation funds in the transportation fund to bring about some of these improvements, amenity improvements that are like multi-million-dollar projects. Because I can tell you just over time, because they are so expensive, it could take millions of dollars. So either we sock away money every year and build towards that, or we come up with a plan, a long-term financial plan that looks to take advantage of our transportation fund revenues and potentially bond out some of those projects so that we could actually get them built out. Council this year, for example, approved monies to do the construction plans for the shared use path on Kendall Drive. And once we do that, I'll know what that project construction estimates are going to be. And then we've applied for grants for that project, but if we don't land grants, then the question is, when are we going to implement? How are we going to get there? How do we pay for all of this? So that's where that was going.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think the genesis of that was really that one of the members of the master plan was disappointed that we didn't have, we hadn't recommended in the near term any bicycle lanes. And so we wanted to assure that that we would consider the bicycle lanes over time. I think the problem subsequent to the master plan was, I don't think the prevailing thought is to add bicycle lanes any longer to roads. And I think that what communities are doing are adding shared use paths. And I think that's where remember on 136th Street, that's why the bike lanes that were approved turned into a shared use path, because the county thought that's a more usable thing. So maybe you change the language from, like you've just done, lane/path and pick one, right? It might be better to have a shared use path on 67th Avenue than a bicycle lane, right? Because think about it from our perspective. I don't know, our users of that are not necessarily the Peloton spandex wearing folks that ride up and down through South Dade, but it's more of neighborhood folks that are getting with their children, things like that. I think our citizens are more comfortable on a shared use path than they would be on the road in a lane. And also, I think that the Peloton type folks, meaning those true cyclists, aren't going to get on a shared use path anyway. They're going to ride in that street.
Right.
Right.
So are we good with leaving that? And do we have a time frame deadline of when you'd like this project to be completed?
Well, you're just talking about the financial. I don't know. Are we working on it already? I mean, if we're looking at a path on 104th.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that I've done it, because the reality is this is how okay. So council has been really consistent over the years in that when we reissue new debt, that we kind of stay within a certain range. Going into implementing financial implementation of these larger projects through the transportation master plan would involve issuing debt that maybe is supported from revenues in the transportation fund. And how does council feel about that? Because that is really the only way we could pay for these things. Or we have to do a long-term capital outlay plan that just socks away money over time. But I don't recommend that. I just think that these amenities are better paid for over longer periods of time, as opposed to depleting, and tying up. I rather use X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that come in regularly and just bond those out into a bigger thing and get amenities actually built and in the ground. That's how I would propose we go forward with it.
You like better to use the county, the people's transportation plans funds, or are you suggesting bonding for this stuff?
I suggest bonding, but using those funds as the funding source for the debt service payments for those projects, because you can pay for some of those long-term projects out of transportation, or specifically out of transportation fund for sure. So I'd be interested in seeing, what that would mean, and then the timing of it and putting something together, and whether it can happen or not, whether it really is enough to support doing a bond that's paid for out of the transportation fund? Or does it have to be part of a greater future bond? Say, you know, when another one is retired, do we include these projects in those bonds? I think those questions still have to be assessed and answered.
Nick, you have something?
I just wanted to comment that in about, I guess it's been 4 years, we got the first, we were one of the first, the project that we did in Homestead, which Joe, you're familiar with because you had some issued an opinion for the parking garage, was done with bonded PTP monies. And it was an unusual project because prior to that, the CITT had not really readily supported the bonding of PTP monies for capital projects, but we presented that one well and they liked it and they approved it. Since that time, we've kind of gone back and forth. We've had a little difficulty with the county's auditor on, you know, her issuing opinions about the project, but it is a good example of a capital project that was eligible for and bonded, eligible for bonded PTP revenue. The one caveat on PTP revenue, and in this case, the underwriters accepted it, is that it's not, you know, it's not absolute and it can vary. It's a sales tax, which can vary. And also the county, while, you know, it hasn't shown a willingness to do so in the past, has sometimes discussed the possibility of eliminating the PTP surtax or sales tax and starting over because they're frustrated with the way that it's been used primarily by the county, not by the local governments. But those are some considerations that you have in looking at bonding capital projects with PTP revenues. It is doable.
The policy issue that I have with leaving this as an objective is that it assumes that every shared use path, every shared use path project that's in the transportation master plan we want to be built. And when we accepted the transportation master plan, we did so very explicitly understanding that every suggested intervention or project or path in it was part of a dynamic system and would be evaluated in the context of every other change we'd made in an ongoing fashion. That everything was an idea that could be built, not an idea that should or would be built. And that's why a more ad hoc and flexible financial implementation methodology is probably called for. There's no reason to believe that every shared use path that's drawn on that piece of paper will be built or should be built or could be built.
So then why don't we just abandon this and just focus on specific projects? I know the mayor had pushed the 67th shared use path project, so we can just deal with them project by project basis and then just take this out.
I think that's consistent.
Yeah, I don't think we want to implement the entirety of the transportation master plan.
So we're gonna take this out and we'll just focus on on those projects that we definitely are interested in agreement are gonna be completed.
Undertaking.
Right. Okay, so I'm taking this out. Okay, now we get into complete all phases of the license plate reader program. I think that's already been addressed and beforehand. And let me see, where did we put that? That was in the, okay, here it is. Evaluate the license plate reader program after phase 3 construction to assess if expansion of the additional technology is recommended. So that would be
right.
Then, so this one's already been discussed by council and approved. Okay. Develop, this one is a suggestion from Council Member Hokumer. This again, we're in the security and pedestrian safety category. Develop a resident safety campaign, including related communication strategy that encourages crime reporting to police department versus through social media outlets.
as I'm reading it in the aftermath, I think what I really want is not necessarily to dictate that this particular strategy happen. I think that's more of a, a recommendation to staff to use to talk about that. It's, what I want is, I would really like staff with the police department to determine if we're not capturing 100% of crime, and if we have a reporting to social media environment developing, which is not resulting in an accurate and timely reporting to the police department. I'm not entirely sure there is a problem, but I see evidence that there might be. I don't know how to put that in the strategic plan, but I think it's something we have to determine. And then if
there's a problematic trend of residents reporting crime through social media outlets, and that are not captured by the traditional crime reporting mechanisms. Assess whether there's a problematic trend or a.
I wouldn't even qualify it as problematic. I don't know whether it's problematic, whether there is a trend.
Of residents reporting crime through social media outlets that are not captured eventually or simultaneously.
Not captured in a timely, I guess.
I have a question. Do we want to make this a little more general, not just crimes? Because it seems like social media is now becoming the place where everybody goes and gripes or talks about issues without picking up the phone and calling the village or the like. I don't know. What do you think, Anna?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all part and parcel of the same social trend, right? That they're, it amplifies certain voices. Other voices aren't participating in it. I think to the extent that we know it exists, the communications plan already captures that, which is one of the reasons why Michelle, tracks the sentiment of the social media mentions and is clearly, looking for trends and topics. But I think that's just part of life, and we're doing a pretty good job, I think, as both the council and a staff of using social media to make sure we're responding to people. But I'm specifically concerned about crime because so often I'm seeing threads of particularly property crime that when I follow up with the police department and say, was this reported? Are you aware of this? The response I get is no. Because people are taking the technology feeds from Ring and these other internet-based security systems, sharing them onto, the proprietary websites of those companies or into the different safety apps and crime apps that are out there, but not necessarily sending that data directly to the police department. And then we end up with a disconnect where our crime data, our perception of what's going on is not in alignment with what appears to be happening on the street.
So there's a couple things here. First, remember now that we have that new Zen City capability where they can mine data from getting just the pulse of what's happening in the community as far as talk is concerned, we'll be able to capture that. I think this is a little bit more of a deep dive that when we do have those hits, to follow through to see if in fact those crimes have never made their way to the police department. Anecdotally, we think that's what's happening. Like people will post their video. The issue is that people won't, I had this conversation with the chiefs that people, if nothing's really stolen and other than just a weird person, you know, suspicious individual kind of scenario, what is there to report to the police? That, you know, are we capturing real crime? Anecdotally, we think we are, because I think people will report if a bike is stolen or if something's broken into, kind of thing. These suspicious individual incidents where people come up to a ring and they're just capturing video, maybe a trespass. Are the ones that I don't know if we're actually capturing, and it'd be an interesting assessment.
Yeah, and then the second step of that is, first we have to assess whether this trend exists, right? Is there a certain category, whether, as Yossi uses the word trespass or things like that, that we have never captured in the past, that we would have never had any reason to know what's going on because nobody had an infrared camera trained on their front door 24 hours a day, right? So there's that. And then the second question, which I think we really do have to determine as a police department and as an organization, is what do we do with this newfound of data? It clearly exists. Entire websites and entire industries of technology and online communities and apps exist to parse and share this information. Clearly people find it significant and meaningful. So, sorry, they're testing the fire alarms in my building today.
Right.
So then the question is, what do we do with it? Do we care? Does it matter? Do we also want to be part of tracking this stuff? Do we want to develop messaging around it that tells people this isn't really significant? You know, we have to respond to it in some way.
All right.
Even if our response is to say, we're not going to take it into, sorry, my dog is now terrified and wants to crawl in my lap. You know, we got to decide what we're going to do with this situation.
Sometimes these conversations take on a life of their own, right? And I'm sure we've all seen them. What if we were to have, and I don't know whether this is a good idea or not, but what if we were to have someone in the department respond? You know, we see your post. If you want to discuss it further, please call us at such and such a number. But so citizens see, oh, okay, they're on it. And then people will perhaps move away from it. Otherwise, it just kind of spirals.
My caution to that is that then basically we're doing communications on those platforms as opposed to trying to direct people to communicate to the law enforcement agency. You know, what happens when you miss, it almost like promotes people then using those platforms to voice their concerns as opposed to communicating with the village, the official village. Like you never know, somebody can say they're officer so-and-so and they go, like we used to have, I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, I'm sure Councilman, the mayor will remember, there used to be Pinecrest Online. Guido can tell you how we used to, you know, before there were really big chat rooms, like that was our thing, and people would post things on there, and then you'd have these, you know, discussions with residents and people, half of them were anonymous and just making these wild claims, and so we would monitor that, and then it started getting, you know, to the point where we're like, okay, the misinformation is rampant. Like at the end of the day, if people are really interested in truth and the official position, it has to be coming through official village things. So I would just caution that we're not members and we're not accepted into all these groups like next door. Like some of those groups are private groups, and you know, that would be my other concern. But
no, I think that's a very legitimate reservation. But maybe we just step up our, you know, see something, say something campaign with here's the village police, which I think
I think the assessment part is good, and then we can report on that to council, give you what our findings are, and then go from there based on whatever we're seeing. Because yeah, the only things that I think probably are not getting reported are like trespass kind of or suspicious individuals, just based on these weird, you know, comments that I get. Sometimes you guys screenshot them over to me just so that we know about it, and then we'll ask if we were in the know and we nobody called us. So we know it's definitely happening. I just don't know how prevalent it is. So-
Assess the trend of residents reporting crime through social media outlets. And let's just assess the trend. Let's put it that way. We want to assess it and establish a policy for managing that information. I'd leave it vague enough. I'd just like to have a policy. We've assessed it. We know this is happening. We see these trends, and we're going to handle it officially in these 3 ways, whatever they are.
Okay. Assess the trend of residents reporting crime through social media outlets that are not captured timely by traditional crime reporting mechanisms. And develop a plan to address the trends.
In singular, I think.
Address concerns, address said trends.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we go with the wordsmithing? And what's the timing on that?
Don't you think that's a this year thing? You think they can get it done by the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, we can monitor what's happening. I think this will eventually be an ongoing thing, to be quite honest with you. I don't think
Yeah, I
it'll
agree.
just
I
be a
just think
1-year thing.
We need to make it something that we
So we
start
do
and
automatically.
once it becomes part of regular business operations, we can say check mark and move it off, right?
I'm almost sure that we'll be able to do this with that new data mining software that we got. So we'll follow up on that. Okay, Councilmember Del Prado suggested that we do reinforce a community-based policing model and raise the police department's overall visibility in the community by implementing public engagement opportunities beyond the crime watch groups and schools. So she was looking and suggesting that the police look at doing more. I know we do, coffee with a cop. We do the traditional crime watch groups. So she was suggesting maybe having, officers at the farmer's market, or maybe having were you thinking of having like a booth there?
Here's what I was thinking. Number one, I think our police department does a great job with community-based policing, but I feel that when my kids were in school, I always knew all the officers. I saw them through the DARE program. I saw them as, they were crossing, when the kids are crossing the streets, I saw them every day. I felt like I was much more engaged. Now that I have older children, I don't have that, daily opportunity. And I wonder
with the individual officers. So it's not just the department, it's just a connection to raise community connection with officers.
I think as a resident, if I know the officer, like I know Officer Oliva, or I know Officer so-and-so, I'm more likely to reach out to the police with something of concern if I have a personal connection, right? And so I thought, well, if we have a canine unit, and I know we talked about that, maybe once every couple months, having an officer visit the farmer's market with their canine, and that may be a disaster because there's other canines there. So I'm just thinking of other opportunities outside of Crime Watch or school where people might interface with our officers and just, see them and feel them and know they're there and have more exposure.
And
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a pop-up cop. I mean, if you had somebody who's, was assigned to spend a couple of hours, standing outside of Milam's with a smile on their face and a banner that says, do you have any questions about the Pinecrest Police Department?
the police officers.
Anna, did you make a pop-up cop?
I don't know. I'm just thinking, how do you?
No, that's cute.
Yeah, something where people
Yes.
going about their business would have an opportunity to chat with our police officers.
Correct.
Well, that was kind
Coffee
of
with a cop.
the coffee with the cop, right?
Yeah, Jason just texted me. We did coffee with the cop. I know,
Right.
like, we used to do, the police officers on bikes and do bike patrol and some of so we do these little things, but maybe just look at having increasing more personal interactions that are not related to being a victim of crime. That the only time you deal with the police should not be when you've been a victim of crime, that you should have those things. So I'll work with them, reinforce a community-based policing model and increase more personal interaction opportunities with police officers.
Do we know if those coffees were effective? Did people show?
Yes, very.
Okay.
People love them. With police about implementing public engagement programs.
So it may be that after COVID, we just bring those back.
Right. Okay, so are we good with that rewording?
Yeah.
Reinforce a community-based policing model and increase more personal interaction opportunities with police officers by implementing public engagement programs and events beyond the crime watch groups and schools.
Right. I mean, if I'm going to sit here and just have ideas run through my head, once we go back to having our weekend festivals and concerts and things like that, if it became part of our policy when we had one of those community events to have a police department component to it, whether it's one of the police officers on patrol is assigned to wander through and simply be friendly and greet people, during the event, and that just becomes part of our policy. Any taking advantage of community engagement opportunities that already exist, so to speak.
Right.
As opposed to patrolling them, which would be
Correct.
a different style of engagement, or directing traffic, or ticketing, people who parked illegally. There's a missing component of, are they simply wandering through and saying hi and kissing babies and, scratching the heads of the dogs and being real people that the community engages with and recognizes as real human beings.
Okay, I wrote K9 in here just as a personal reminder to ask you all. We had that kind of discussion. Currently, the K9 that we had has been retired, and this current budget does not include a K9 officer. And I don't know if this is more of a discussion for budget, but typically when we're going to set up budget, we've had input from council, and this particular program, the chiefs both have expressed that other than simply PR, there's, because of the nature of crime in Pinecrest, the K9 is not something that we use frequently. Have we used it? Yes. It becomes more of a PR mechanism, and the question then is there interest in the council to continue that program? The chiefs questioned the need for it, but what are your thoughts on that? Are there any sentiment one way or the other?
If I recall, we paid for it initially. We purchased and trained the dog through some specially earmarked fund, and
Which we can't do again, because now this is an ongoing program. Yeah, it was done through forfeiture funds and whatnot, and so
there was some question at the time whether or not it was necessary, and whether or not, if we needed a police dog, we could simply use the county's.
Which we can call the county, and a lot of times that's what we end up doing anyway, because
the dog lives with the patrolman, and the patrolman may live 25 miles away, and so it may be easier to get a county dog in timely fashion. I mean, I think it's a budget question, number one, and number two, I think it's a budget question that has to be informed by data. How much did it cost us? How often did we use the lovely?
Yeah, off the top of my head, it's about a $40,000 price tag, between vet bills and that sort of thing. I don't know that the staff is not recommending doing it. I just didn't want to cut it out completely without having input from you
But
guys.
you said the prior K9 was paid for through civil forfeiture funds?
Yeah, but
And
that's it. We can't go after those again, because now it's already been budgeted program, so it's not a new program.
Got it.
Plus the vehicle, you have to, it requires like a specialized vehicle. So there are a lot of costs involved in it. And I think the return from a crime fighting perspective is not really achieved. I think it's more of a PR kind of thing. So I just wanted to have that discussion. I don't know that we need to do anything from a strategic planning perspective, but if there's all right, I don't know that there's anything. Let me just look at, So again, we're still on the security and pedestrian safety. We've gone over the things we've talked about. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about with regards to security? Or the policing?
I just have a question about our police who are stationed at the elementary schools. Is there any word about how that's gonna proceed in the future if Miami-Dade Public Schools is gonna take that over, or has that become kind of a permanent thing?
We get reimbursed by the county, by the school board, to provide those officers at some point. You know, if they ever wanted to replace us, they can.
Because I know last year Chief Lopez said their goal is to have their people in every school, and I didn't know what the timeline was.
Chief Bowen has written that they will eventually staff it, but we don't know when, is what his comment is.
Okay.
So for now, it's ours. Okay, so this particular category will stop being pedestrian safety. It's just going to be security. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we're okay with the timeline for this.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, moving on. Next category is residential character and community enhancement. Okay. Existing, again, everything in white is existing. Blue is suggested. Okay, develop a strategy to improve the overall quality of properties through more proactive enforcement and an emphasis on exterior maintenance. This is ongoing.
I think that's now become sort of part of what we do, right? They've even, for a couple of years now, been reporting how many code compliance notifications
Yes.
are initiated by staff versus our response to somebody's complaint. So
Right.
I think that's check mark, personally.
Any feedback on just general, in general, everyone's okay with the level of code enforcement in the village and that we do take a proactive approach to enforcement? Are we good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's the right level of enforcement. I mean, it's not, does anybody think we're overdoing it? I don't think we're overdue. I think it's, you know, we get a complaint, we go and enforce it, and I'd hate
Okay,
to.
so I'm gonna take this off because we have a strategy of proactive enforcement. Okay,
Yeah, I think my sense is that we're doing pretty well. When people complain, we respond. Things that are particularly egregious violations seem to be addressed without a complaint. It's a good balance, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get one almost constant complainer, but about code, but I don't know if we'll ever fix that.
from a past code enforcement officer who still wants to be a code enforcement officer. Yeah.
You get to
Okay.
think,
Conduct a canopy survey of the village every 5 years and or thereafter a significant storm event. If you recall, we hired a company that's called Cyclopedia. They went and rode every single street in the village. We created like GIS mapping that now documents every tree in the rights of way, what type of tree, the specimen. And so just for FEMA reimbursement purposes, we want to obviously update that every year, every 5 years, or eventually after a storm, so we can capture any lost canopy, what trees came down, and then we can put those in for reimbursement from FEMA. So that's an ongoing thing. I don't know that we need to have this in here. I think it's pretty much now standard procedure that we would do this every so often. So if you're okay with it, I would recommend
The
we
strategic objective was to create the initial
the canopy initial survey, which we've done.
baseline.
Correct,
And operationally, it would be something that was updated
correct.
in that criteria. So I think that's a done deal.
So unless there's any objection, I would take this out.
No, that works.
Okay. continue to implement the goals of the education compact and advocate for area public schools. Again, that's one of those ongoing.
And we're doing that.
I think that's when's it done. We're doing it unless there's a specific change we want to make in what we're advocating for or something. I don't know.
Is there anything you all want to change about how we interact with the public schools?
No, I think we do. I'm satisfied with the interaction.
So take this out.
Yeah, I think it's now part of what we do.
Okay, develop a marketing plan for local public schools in conjunction. This was the one that we did where we branded the schools. We had not updated recently just because of pandemic, everything kind of fell through, but we do have it on our follow-up things to do with communications to follow up and eventually update those marketing brochures. Is there anything additional that we should be doing to I guess amplify what we're doing at the local public schools?
I would say, number one, it's now become part of our budget, which sort of makes it real, right? There's a small fee associated with printing up the brochures. So that kind of makes it operational. I would get rid of the marketing plan per se. I think we did it and we're now maintaining it. If in 5 years somebody wants to update it or change it, then that'll be a future council's decision. The only item that we might want to put on our radar is to evaluate and develop and understand the movements that we see in charter schools coming into the village. There's clearly a movement both at the Lutheran Church and at Shira.
Agree.
To bring charter schools into the village. I think the council and staff needs to understand exactly what the legal framework is statewide and with Miami-Dade County Public Schools as to what our role is in that, how it might affect the village, how it might affect traffic, how it might affect neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. We somehow have to put language in there so that we spend some time thinking about that and at least understanding the lay of the land.
We can't do anything about it though, right?
That's the question. I mean, everybody flippantly says you can't do anything about it. If we can't do anything about it, then I want to understand that we can't do anything about it and where in Florida law it says we can't do anything about it. If there is something to be done about it, then I'd like to know where that is.
So I would say that it sounds like this would be something that would involve assessing legal components of or legal elements of charter school. I don't know, something having to do with the legal assessment of legal whatever, like what is, because other than project specific reviews of council, so if the Lutheran were to come in, then we would have like a whole assessment of that. You're looking at it more, Steve is saying we can control schools through zoning. So
how about determine villages standing to, I don't want to say regulate, but villages standing with regard to charter schools within village limits?
That's nice. That's nice and broad.
determine
Village
standing.
I don't want to say to challenge because that sounds confrontational, vis-a-vis or with regard to charter schools within village boundaries or charter schools within, yeah. How does that sound, Mitch?
He doesn't like it.
You don't like it?
Oh, I'm just teasing.
He's gone. He's totally long gone. He's playing with his dogs.
Mitch is with Doug.
Let me text him. No, he's there. He's just probably in another meeting. Sometimes he jumps off. Let me.
I'm here.
Yeah, okay. Okay. This is determine villages standing with regard to charter schools within municipal boundaries. What are your thoughts on that verbiage of that?
We're trying to determine, Mitch, whether we have any standing to challenge a charter school being established within the village.
You know, that keeps getting more and more limited by state preemption, but we can give you an update on that and just prepare you a memo to tell you exactly what our what our parameters are. But for example, if it's started by a church or synagogue or any kind of house of worship, we're very limited in what we can do, even with respect to things like floor area ratio and things like that.
Wow.
Right. And I think so. I think it's important to create the document to make sure that council and staff clearly understand the document, and so that we all have talking points that are consistent and accurate as these new entities come in, because I know that they will be coming in shortly.
Okay, so the assignment is, and I guess Yossi, you could change this, is to advise the village council and staff as to parameters of municipal regulation of charter schools.
Yep, that works.
Mitch, could you define floor area ratio? Does that have to do with student capacity?
No, it does not. Floor area ratio is just the typically in your code, for each zone, you will have a permissible ratio between the floor area of improvements and the total amount of land available for the improvements. So that's something that's in every land use decision. There's a floor area ratio that applies. That was just an example I was throwing out. Student capacity. I won't be able to advise you just offhand. But we've looked at this in several times, and I'll be able to provide you probably without having to do a lot of new research with a lay of the land as far as the extent to which we can control and regulate the development of charter schools.
Develop a report that explains and analyzes the village's parameters of municipal regulations. That doesn't make sense. The villages.
No, the villages, the extent of village jurisdiction to regulate development of charter schools.
The extent of villages jurisdiction to regulate new charter schools.
New charter school development. Because we're talking mainly about development. We're not attempting to regulate curriculum or things like that. Our jurisdiction obviously is limited to the actual physical plant that they're attempting to develop.
Okay.
But that's always been true, and that would be true with respect to public school or private school as well.
Or compile a report that explains and analyzes the extent of the village's jurisdiction to regulate new charter school development.
Yossi, we don't compile reports.
What do you do? Develop?
We draft.
I'm just gonna put develop. Is that okay?
Okay.
Develop. Okay. What's the timing for council to have that done?
I'll have that in 2 weeks.
Certainly this year, no question.
Okay.
It'll be as soon as you need it, as quickly as tomorrow. But if you give me 2 weeks, then I'll have it for you then.
Okay. Explore the installation of unique street lights and replacement of mast headlights to improve community character. This one was something you all had given to us already, and we've been working on that. This is almost identical to the street lights at the intersection thing.
Yeah, I would take that one out.
Yeah.
That's vestigial. That's from a couple councils ago.
Okay.
And it's redundant.
Sorry, my dog is losing its mind here. If
We
something,
can't. Seriously.
Oh, sorry. I keep hitting the wrong thing and it does something weird. Okay. Okay. The mayor and Councilmember Holcomb and some of the other council members later all agreed to this one. Review the land development regulations in the commercial corridor to identify opportunities to promote mixed use with a focus on transportation hubs associated with the planned BRT.
Excellent.
Right. That's
When do you want this done by?
well, that's kind of the land use.
Ongoing, so we're gonna be working on that now, right? So it's gonna be 2021,
2020, I think,
completed by 22.
Yeah, I think it'll be completed by 22.
Yeah, we could, that's what we were talking about earlier. We could do it, this fall or next winter.
Yeah, we're kind of on it already, but the deadline to complete is the 22. Okay, develop engagement campaign to discuss commercial corridor considerations. We had talked about that when we were talking about the Inspire, and then I just made a note here that we would, that we want to develop a public engagement campaign,
Isn't that the same thing? I mean, isn't that part of the previous one?
but you didn't want to mix the two things. You specifically said that you didn't want to include discussion or vetting those land development ideas as part of that Inspire Pinecrest thing. You wanted it like almost like a separate.
Okay, yeah,
I mean, we could have an Inspire Pinecrest type campaign, but it's specific to land development regulation considerations.
yeah, right. If we're looking at the land use and zoning on the corridor, we'd have a campaign to look at that, right? Right, so it would be whatever workshops or whatever.
Just gonna call it an Inspire engagement campaign to discuss, to specifically discuss commercial corridor considerations.
Right.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
And the deadline that you wanted to do that would be
21, since
21.
All part of the same, the project above it.
so 2022.
Okay. Update the village's socioeconomic data in the economic profile, retail gap analysis, and other documents. This is, it's, I think almost done. Let me see what Steve tells me, but I'm almost 100% sure that if it hasn't been finished, it's going to be finished within the next month. This particular, it's happening right now. It's in progress. So do you want to, oh, it's done. He wrote done.
Okay, if it's done and it's
This is
actually
done. It hasn't been reported to council, but we will be providing that to council likely when we get into land development workshop, because that retail gap analysis and all that has been done in anticipation of your discussions for land development workshops.
okay, then let's get rid of it. That's a check mark then.
Draft already for my review first. Okay, so the draft is there. So got it. Thanks, Steve. Okay. Okay, so then let's go down to the new to 3.4. Investigate the possibility and options to improve the aesthetics of the pavement at Pinecrest entry points from US 1. This was part of that vision plan where we talked that when you drove into the village off of US 1, parallel to wherever the commercial corridors existed, that we would look at pavement treatments that would give like a sense of place. So this was something that's, an aesthetic improvement. Are we still?
Yeah, how long's that been there?
Been there for a while, because quite frankly, the US 1 corridor vision stuff hasn't really, we haven't taken it to the next level. And I think when you get into redeveloping the corridor, that then those opportunities can be tied to those developments. Like if we wanted to do, there's all kinds of different things you can, and I can report and give you options. One of them is that you can do almost like overhead entry points, you can do pavement treatments like, stamped brick look swaths of street at just off of US 1 that maybe go parallel to the width of the commercial properties, so that when people come into Pinecrest, they know, oh, they're coming into something different with some kind of pavement treatment.
Yeah, I always thought that it would be nice to subtly have a look that everybody could distinguish from being somewhere else. do we do that with just our tree canopy? I don't know if we've ever accomplished that, and I'm confused on exactly how to do it. I mean, Yossi, your idea is all the landscaping on US 1 that kind of beautifies it above and beyond what the landscaping on US 1 looks like in other communities, right?
Right. My idea was creating a sense of place on that median where when you come in, you know you're not, in Coral Gables, you're not in color, like that we have our own, which is that landscape concept that we have. We have something. We just currently, we need to, if we were going to build something like that, it involves putting irrigation into those medians. It involves putting lighting into those medians. It involves, obviously, it's multi-million dollars worth of improvements. It involved street lights that look like the ones replacing the ones that are there now with the ones that look the same as the ones on Kendall Drive, so that you definitely know when you've come into Pinecrest that you're in Pinecrest. Kind of like when you're in Aventura, you're in Aventura. They have their own landscape plans in the medians on, along the US 1 corridor up there. And you just know you're in Aventura. It looks different. So I always felt that, we can make a huge difference on the US 1 corridor, but it's expensive. I think back then the estimates was $3.5 million project.
Woo. I like the idea. It's just that I don't like the price tag. So it always goes to the bottom of the list. I kind of like the idea that the method we used to employ before, people knew they were in Pinecrest because they got a speeding ticket. But I guess we can't do that anymore. and really notice, right?
Kind of, like luxury, like aren't we shabby chic? Isn't that our aesthetic? As opposed to Aventura, I'm in a mall.
Well, our look and the landscape concept that was developed for the medians in Pinecrest is not an Aventura look. It's not a manicured look. It's definitely more Pinecrest, natural. Obviously we would not be removing the big canopy trees that are out there. We would be augmenting with some like low, what do they call it, ground cover, different ground cover, and just changing it from the typical medians, but still preserving like the large canopy trees. I know the last time we spoke about it was that we would do it almost like a pilot program and just start working our way through projects by median swath and just, doing like little pilot segments of it. Obviously that's not going to have the impact of just doing one big project, and if so either way, I think in an attempt to keep council kind of going in the direction that I've been pitching for a long time, we agreed to just do piecemeal, and that was what I was able to sell to council.
What have we started? What have we piecemealed yet?
We haven't.
Oh, okay. I like it. Keep doing.
Because then the pandemic hit and everything kind of just, we haven't moved it.
I don't know. It always, it just seems so expensive. Maybe we do a pilot intersection, see what it looks like, right?
I already have direction from council to do that. So, and I think there's even money budgeted for that. So if you guys, this particular 3.4 went beyond just the median stuff. It was specific to recommendations in the US 1 vision plan that talked about creating pavement treatments at all our entryways when you turned off US 1, say on 117th, that there would be something there that would just be from a pavement perspective announcing that you've now entered Pinecrest.
Which intersection were you pinpointing for the first?
I'm sorry?
Which intersection were you looking at?
It's not an intersection because the main intersections wouldn't, I mean, we could do it at main intersections, but it was meant to look at, for example, I'm trying to think of a place that has it, but.
But didn't you say you were going to do one as an example?
No, the direction was that we investigate what the possibilities, like I'd have to develop concepts. Why don't we do that? Let me just develop concepts for options to improve aesthetics of the pavement and have a consultant give us some cool concepts that maybe we can look at and then have an opinion, because it's kind of like talking in the dark.
Right.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, you could paint a number on the street or something like that. Like
Um,
the,
You could do a number like our elevation,
right.
one of the points of
Oh,
entry,
gosh.
like a big number, and then you could just an idea.
Develop concepts for gateway pavement treatments.
Or gateway treatments. I mean, it doesn't have to be pavement, right? Or does it? Because I don't know. Just do go ahead and do something. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Treatments
I'm
to,
not an interior designer. I got nothing for you here.
I've seen, points from US1. Okay, I've seen places where they have almost like a little overhead gate. That's,
Yeah, like them.
I've seen like up north, Mayor, you would, and maybe I don't know, council member Hokumer, if she has that up where she's from, but I've seen like in New Jersey, you know, when you come into the cities, they have these really pretty signs when you go in, you know, like up in North Jersey, when you're going from one little town to another, where they're distinct signs. It's not like just street signs. They're like really.
Yes, we paint the name on the giant water tank.
Oh yeah,
So
Right.
maybe we should get one of
we need a
those
water
and
Hey,
paint Pinecrest
a
on
water.
it.
We'll get a water tank and collect rainwater.
Okay, so I'm gonna develop concepts for gateway or pavement treatments to improve the aesthetics at village entry points from US1. This goes beyond the stuff, the gateway features, the monument entrance signs that we're already gonna be replacing, that this is beyond that, okay? So I will have something for you guys to look at before the end of the year on that.
May I
Okay.
ask just a logistical question? How long do we have today?
I think we all agreed till noon. I don't know if people want to go beyond that.
I'm open for the most part of the day. Just I wanted to reserve 15 minutes at the end for something, and
Okay.
just give me 15 minutes. At the end.
Okay. All right, continue to implement the village-wide street tree planning program to replace lost canopy. This is ongoing to me. This is just standard operating procedures. I would recommend we remove this.
We've been
I agree.
doing that for decades at this point.
Okay. Create Pinecrest branded. This was something we added last year, and I don't know, to me, I know where you were going with it. It just create Pinecrest branded items to promote community pride and sense of place to benefit the 501c3 for Pinecrest Gardens. So I think that we had toyed with the idea of doing those, like, you know, the VOP stickers that go on people's cars and that sort of thing. And it was meant to be to generate funds for the 501c3 in support of Pinecrest Gardens. I would suggest that 501c3 should come up with their own fundraising campaigns.
Yeah, I think the 501c3 actually exists now, number one. Number two, it looks like the Gardens actually now has an online shop.
Right.
They're selling some of the arts and crafts that they've sold in person.
Right.
I think that should move over to the 501c3.
So take it out. My recommendation that would be to remove this. Or is
Okay.
everyone okay with that?
Yes,
Fine.
ma'am.
Okay. Now, update the Veterans Wayside Park Master Plan. We talked about improving aesthetics. I'm just gonna take this out because we addressed
Yeah.
the Wayside Park issue already. Okay, new stuff. Complete an internal assessment of current hiring and management practices relevant to the village's 2007 resolution in support of equal pay for women and present to the village council. This, I think, should go in organizational excellence, first of all. And as opposed to this, I guess it must have been, I just put it in the wrong place. I apologize. So is everyone okay? Is everyone okay with this suggestion? This was from council member Hokumer.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I will move this to organizational excellence. Up here. Paste. And okay, this is going to be this.
And that's this year, right?
Yeah, that we're going to have this year. Okay, I'll change the red. The red's going to go to that transportation thing, if you remember. Okay. Okay, Council Member Del Prado suggests to implement a community building initiative that encourages resident volunteerism by promoting opportunities for service to the community. So we have, but we can augment our message. Because we do have a volunteer program. I just, her and I were talking how sometimes like people don't even know what's happening or the opportunities that exist. Like, how do we amp up that getting the word out about this stuff?
Right. Good point.
To the extent that the opportunities already exist, I think that's part of, you know, the communications department needs to incorporate that into its strategies in social media.
So implement a robust communications campaign to
That encourages resident volunteerism
Yeah.
by promoting opportunities for service in the community.
right.
Which may mean, you know, we create a page on the website that's, you know, Pinecrest volunteers, which means we may, I don't know, coordinate with the YAC maybe, since those are kids that are always doing volunteer initiatives.
Exactly.
How to bring it all in one basket.
Exactly. You know, like maybe once a month we have a table at the farmer's market where, you know, it's like Orlando Cares or MBA Cares, you know, something where we're coming together as a community to do something for the greater good. And maybe we use that at, you know, as a vehicle for student-led things. And again, it could be as simple as a food drive, you know, Pinecrest Cares, where we're doing a food drive at the market, come by on Sunday, leave your canned goods to be donated to thus and so. And it can be something, anyway. I just thought it was.
I think you're right. So we did the polished Pinecrest, which was pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
almost 180 people participated. But if part of our community programming was a monthly volunteer activity, whether it's garbage or food drive or whatever it is, and either do it through Parks and Rec, do it through the village itself, do it through the gardens. I'm not sure, but I think it's a great concept to flesh out and structure.
Yeah.
So not just develop the robust communications campaign, but to also implement a monthly volunteer program, we do. So everyone, just to make you aware, we have a good volunteer program. In fact, Mr. Abbott, council member Katie Abbott's father is one of our regular volunteers at the gardens, and we partner with folks at the school to obviously promote community service hour opportunities for the school children. We can kind of, you know, create more of that type of community event where we are doing volunteer events, like a community engagement events that are meant to allow people to do service for the community, like, you know, the one we just did for cleaning up the Pinecrest, and we can look for other opportunities. So
yeah, I think it's a great initiative. Yeah.
We just have a section in the Sun, you know, that just says upcoming volunteer opportunities and contact information.
by promoting opportunities.
I think there's one thing is promoting, you know, having robust communications campaign to tell people about opportunities that already exist. But I think that a second new initiative would be creating a Pinecrest Volunteer Corps program that has monthly community opportunities to engage in monthly opportunities to engage in community service in Pinecrest. And so the example would be Polished Pinecrest. And Polished Pinecrest could be something that became monthly, or it could be quarterly, and however we wanted to come up with ideas for it. I think there's an appetite for it, particularly because I saw other organized groups like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, groups that were looking for ways to engage in service activities that just needed to be told what to do and put within a framework that made sense for them. So it seems like a really great initiative, particularly given the number of school kids we have around that are always looking for ways to
Engage.
community service hours in.
So create a service activity program that provides monthly opportunities for community-based organization and groups to volunteer for residents, community-based or so, because I was just thinking as you all were talking, like the Rotarians exist for that purpose. Like we do have community-based groups that we've partnered and associated with that promote like volunteerism. We just have to kind of connect everything and then, develop. It's almost like it's not creating, because some of it already exists. It's just putting together, compiling a program that then we can push out as opportunities for volunteer activity.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
If we create an umbrella and a central landing site, and we go out of our way as part of our community programming to make sure that there's at least one activity a month that we can direct to our community members under the aegis of the Village of Pinecrest, to serve the community, which may be within our own parks and recreation facilities or organized through another community organization, then we'll have structured it.
Okay. Create a service activity program that provides or promotes monthly opportunities for residents, community-based organizations, and other groups to volunteer.
Yeah,
I like it.
I like that a lot. And that's going to create natural partnerships.
Yeah.
When do you all want to do that by?
Writing up the program and setting it up and getting it running is something that can happen this year. I mean, we're creating a web page and organizing, 12 activities.
Okay. Create a post-pandemic event that invites area restaurants to set up kiosks at Pinecrest Gardens. I know exactly what Councilmember Del Prado was talking. So we had toyed with the idea. Remember, we used to have a Taste of Pinecrest event that kind of went away. And then she and I were talking about possibilities of, post-pandemic, trying to help the restaurants that have been really hit to amplify their presence in the community and maybe host like on a monthly basis, some kind of, Friday night at the gardens where you have, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 different restaurants that just come set up in the meadow and people can just mill around and enjoy a night under the stars kind of thing. So that's I think it was an idea for a program more than anything else that would involve food and also that partnership with the restaurants that are hurting right now.
I think it's a great idea. I think so. What we want to do is we really want to create a post-pandemic program to assist area restaurants in. How about create a program to assist area restaurants in post-pandemic recovery, and then all of the above would then be part of that program, right? Really brainstorm with staff all the different ways that we can elevate their profile, whether it's piggybacking on the idea of the Christmas gift guide that we did, do one just for restaurants, whether it's an event or events at Pinecrest Gardens, whether it's a taste of Pinecrest.
I was gonna say, are we just limiting it to restaurants, or are we doing businesses as well?
I think restaurants are a unique market, right? In terms of how you help them. I would certainly create another post-pandemic program to assist our small businesses, our local businesses.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Piggybacks on what we did with the CARES funds and the guide.
And even if we just do something with social media for our smaller businesses.
Yeah. Oh, and that was the other thing. People really liked the idea of the Christmas gift guide, but and a lot of people said that should be an annual thing. Maybe we want to establish creating an annual Christmas, small business local Christmas gift guide or holiday gift guide. Because when I mentioned it to Michelle, she said she really did need several months to really put one together. It's a huge amount of work to do the photography and get the information and write the content and stuff like that. So if it's something we want to do annually, we need to have a longer production cycle than 3 months or 3 weeks, excuse me. It needs to be several months. And then it needs to be out really by before Thanksgiving-ish.
Okay, so let me go back to the first one. Coordinate a post-pandemic program to assist area restaurants in recovering from economic effects.
Mm-hmm.
And that one can mean a lot of different things, but we'll work internally for staff to do that. We'll work on that and get stuff going this year. We develop a business guide. Again, it's a
local business guide.
So the one we had was local and area business. We allowed, I think, neighboring,
right,
like
but it
places.
was specifically small businesses. There weren't any chains in it. It was small business, sole proprietors, stuff like that, right?
So is it for the purposes of like a holiday guide kind of thing, or should it just be a business guide?
Everybody really liked the holiday guide, right? That was kind of a weird organic result of the BizHack training. I think that's really how it came about. People really liked it, even though it was only online. It was very attractive, but it was certainly a scramble and was certainly not exhaustive. There were a lot of local businesses that could have participated that didn't, just because they weren't part of that training. So yeah, I think an end of the year kind of annual tradition, just like we created the schools brochure, which we now are going to update until we've decided that's no longer a good idea. I think the concept started, and maybe that's one of the good things that'll come out of COVID that should become an annual part of what we do. And then once it becomes part of just our general ongoing way of doing business, it's done and it can get off the strategic plan, right?
Develop a support your business initiative or guide to raise awareness of local business offerings during the holiday season.
Yeah, I think so.
And people start shopping in October.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we probably want to work. Yeah, they want to shoot all the pictures in July or something.
Okay, so we have those 2 new initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that anyone can think of? Let me just go back. This is more like, this is under the residential character and community enhancement. Which is fine. I think if
Yeah,
it's still
I
fit in
think
there.
that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
To put it in there.
Can I just
Okay.
go back to 3.6 for a second? It's something I thought about when we were talking about it, the volunteer idea, which is great. Everybody loves in Grant's paper, how he features the 3 students. And we have a lot of residents who go above and beyond giving back to the community. And I don't know if we want to consider in the sun or somehow, recognizing maybe an issue or one a month, a resident who, goes above and beyond, like Mr. Bull, who cleaned up all the garbage, or Mr. Ennikus, who got, 200 plus people a vaccination, if that's something we want to consider, maybe as a tie-in to this volunteer program to recognize someone.
We have the Pinecrest Kinds. You had mentioned that, and I had kind of spoken to Michelle because we have the hashtag Pinecrest Kinds that we can feature. We've featured the gentleman that would go, walking down our streets before. So I think I had already mentioned that we should feature people like that, like Mr. Ennikus's work, and just highlight those efforts. I think, in fact, Michelle just texted me, she's doing it this week.
Like a hometown hero or a hometown shero.
We have a hashtag, it's called Pinecrest Kind, and we try to identify acts of kindness. So we would anticipate and we would consider exactly what he did as one of those, notable things, and we can just, based on that, it would be, the Pinecrest Kind concept is an umbrella for everything that, can be considered something kind.
I was just thinking maybe something a little more formalized where residents can actually, nominate fellow residents for it. And it's kind of a known program.
Yeah, well, I would say from a strategic plan perspective, because the way the communications plan is written, it specifically says that it promotes the objectives and messages in the strategic plan. Once we create a strategic objective of a service activity and program and promote volunteerism, necessarily her plan says she has to start creating content tied to that objective.
Got it.
So that's kind of that. It was set up that way so that it would auto feed into the communications plan that way.
I just got a text message, just a question. Mitch, can you just confirm my thoughts that our failure as a village to respond to a social media post on a Facebook post does not create any kind of liability from a legal standpoint for the village for not responding to something, right? Like a police post, something that has to do with law enforcement or something that are not responding to that does not create.
Like somebody puts something on his or her own Facebook page,
right? Or like on Nextdoor puts some information and we don't respond to that.
No, we're not in any way obligated to monitor any social media or to respond to any social media, or really even to respond to emails unless they are specific as to, for example, a public records request.
Right.
But if somebody sends someone an email that says, I'm not happy about the peacock situation, and you don't respond, there's no liability for that. Right.
Okay. Just wanted to have you opine on that officially because somebody was asking me, a member of the public.
And just to add to that, all our police social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, all have a message on them that says to report anything, you need to contact the number non-emergency or 911. That the police doesn't necessarily monitor their social media feeds 24/7.
Right.
So we do have that caveat on all our platforms.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it was more just because I wanted it addressed just because there were questions coming from the public. Okay. Any other thoughts on this category, which is the residential character and community enhancement category? If not, Mayor, we're getting close. We can continue and get maybe through two of these in recreation infrastructure, and then I'll stop at 11:45. Okay. Investigate water access opportunities throughout the village and evaluate the possibility of acquisition. So this one, I can tell you, there are only two properties that have water access to the bay, which is the Athos property and the Christ the King property. We have completed appraisal for the Athos property, and years ago reached out to Charlie Athos to advise that the village might be interested in purchasing that property. At the time, there was no interest in selling the property. Was intending to reach out again and just feel it out again, just to see, because it's been at least 2 or 3 years, if not more, since the last time we reached out to Miss Athos. So I don't know that there's any other water access opportunities other than those 2 properties. So we know what they are. You know, it's a matter of them wanting to sell it to us at this point. So I even kind of talked to Mitch to see if there was legally anything that preclude the village from maybe coming to an agreement where we would purchase the property now and just allow the person to continue to live on the property until they passed away. And we can explore that. So I was just going to throw those things out and see if any of them got any traction. But other than that, I don't know what more we can do. If anybody knows Miss Athos personally and closely, nobody's really friends that I know of. We just know who she is, but nobody's really close with her. So that's where we're at. So do you want to do anything else on that? Do you want to leave it on there just as a placeholder? What do you all want to do?
Well, we're considering purchasing another property, right?
For water access? No.
Well, yeah, I mean, how much money do we have to be purchasing properties? I mean, you've got the one we're looking at now, you've got this one, potentially another one. I mean, at some point we run out of funds.
Or we have to increase taxes, correct, to be able to make those acquisitions, correct?
Right.
So I think when we do the master planning process for the Parks and Recreation, the council will have a better idea of what our level of service is, and then we can readdress future acquisitions. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I would say as a strategic objective, we can probably remove it for this year because we know where we are now. And if at the end of the transportation master planning process, something's highlighted, which would require us to shift or change our evaluation, we would put it back in, right? We're going to, next January, February, we're going to be back here updating this document anyway, right?
So is everybody okay with me taking this off the table for now? We know that we want this. We just have to kind of sit and wait it out.
It's not a strategic objective at this point. It's just
right.
It just is.
It is, right.
I can't recall when it hasn't been something we've been interested in.
Right. So I'm going to take this off. We all know how council feels. Okay. Okay. Create additional recreational opportunities to continue to provide a high standard of parks as the community needs change by actively pursuing the acquisition of land for future parks.
Well, we're doing that. I think that's more of a policy than a strategic objective.
The question is, do we continue, like, is this a continuing, ongoing goal that we're always looking for acquisition opportunities?
I think we start to look less after we've made a few initial purchases, right? Just because of the financing of the whole issue.
Right. When is enough? Like, do we?
Probably now.
Are you including the Palermo property in your now? I mean,
well, once you do the Palermo property, right, you have capacity to bring anything else on without a tax increase, and then you got to consider whether you want to increase taxes for this type of thing, and it becomes a little bit more challenging.
How about I would say, number one, I would say an objective for this year is to acquire the Palermo property. We've already voted on funding for it, so.
And that's already going to happen next week. Like I don't.
That's a done deal.
That's done. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the next week. So I don't know that that's a strategic.
As part of the parks master plan, are they going to use criteria to evaluate whether we are sufficiently parked?
Yes, that's part of their process of doing a master plan, is to review.
Pull that out until we've completed the master planning process. And if they determine we're under parked, then we can have a discussion about whether or not we want to go, on an acquisition tear and build that into, our financing going forward, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, because this goal really kind of implies that we're taking an active role to identify locations and then acquire them. At one point, like you'll recall that there were initiatives, I think it's in the comprehensive master plan, where we talk about identifying smaller parcels to create pocket parks and neighborhood parks that are passive open space, just small little pockets of open space land. And
that's
so,
something, if I recall, that was even generated under Jeff Cutler. I can remember Jeff was a huge proponent of the pocket parks.
right,
I believe very strongly that, at least at the criteria that I'm aware of, indicates that Pinecrest is underparked. We only meet the established criteria by doing funky things like including school playgrounds and play yards in our calculations, and that there is community interest in acquiring properties to create passive park space, not necessarily amenities, but passive park space. If that's changed, we should discuss it. But if it's up for question, it shouldn't be in the strategic plan, right?
okay. So I think for now, we just see how 4.5, create a comprehensive parks and recreation master plan that evaluates current
Levels of
facilities and identifies service level considerations for possible future acquisition.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this is one of those items that we have to put a 10-year cap on. We have to think about it in terms of, 10 years from now when we're not necessarily on council. And so when we create that master plan, think this is where we are. This is an evaluation of current status. This is where we project Pinecrest will be 10 years from now. In the interim, if we're projecting that we're going to have a deficiency or not be meeting an appropriate level of service, then it should be in there that we might be acquiring something because we think we'll need it in the future, so to speak. But that's a very long-term cycle as opposed to a very short-term strategic plan item.
And then we have just a reminder to everyone, for those that do not recall, that currently there are appraisals being done on another property that we are still awaiting responses from. And then council will have to, I guess, discuss amongst yourselves if there's an interest in that property. But like the mayor says, it starts at some point. We can't continue to absorb it in our operations, and it will require increasing taxes. That Shara in particular is one that we're toying with and have been asked to consider. So I'm in the process of getting some numbers so that you all can actually speak in numbers and understand what the consideration.
Very large number.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to take out 4.1, and it's basically being replaced with the comprehensive parks and recreation master plan process that we're going to be engaged in. Okay, Mayor, it's 4:46. So you said you wanted 11:46. You said you wanted 15 minutes.
When would everybody want to wrap this up? Do everybody want to wrap at noon, or do you want to get through this page, or how would you guys prefer to?
I'm okay until 1:30 even.
I can continue, but I have to switch to the phone because I have to pick up my son, but I can continue.
I have, I can hang, it's okay, I'm good till 12:30 or 1.
You want to go to 12:30 then? Let's do 12:30.
Okay. Okay, we'll keep plowing ahead. Okay, seek to ensure Miami-Dade County will expand and eventually complete the Miami-Dade water and sewer infrastructure in the village. This was the mayor's suggestion. Everyone on board with that?
Yeah, we have a plan from Weiss Sirota and everything.
So that is gonna be what time frame?
Ongoing, right? We should do that starting immediately and then wrap it
We
up
have a
whenever.
target goal date by which we're gonna assess that we've been successful in this venture.
Let's put it at 2025. That's the longest date out that we have, because even in an ideal scenario, we're talking about changing county bonding policy, getting ourselves onto a county budget, having them bid it out, having them execute it. I mean, we'll be able to reevaluate whether we've achieved it or at least moved the ball down the field between now and 2025.
Okay,
I think that's a reasonable timeline, understanding how quickly government moves to actually complete a multi-million-dollar infrastructure project.
right.
This,
Okay.
I see, a few different possibilities for how we accomplish this. And they take various amounts of time. In my view, if we include, if one of the most likely paths to success is having the county include connection to water in whatever it does with taking people off of septic tanks and putting them onto sewers. And that, that's a very long process. So, if we got them to agree that that is part of the project and have the bonding for that as part of that larger project of eliminating septic tanks, it could be longer than the timeline that you have there, but we will at least know. On the other hand, the property owners are pushing ahead with another track that might accomplish it much sooner if we can successfully navigate the state revolving loan fund process. The property owners may want to form a special district and take advantage of that. So that would happen in the next 3 years, I think. So there are various timelines that would get us where we want to go and we would consider successful, but they have very, very differing, highly differing lengths.
Right.
Yeah. Let me cut in. This leads to what I wanted to talk about. I think this approach that we have set up in these objectives here was designed for what would happen if we didn't do a special assessment or a special taxing district or get involved with the loan fund. And I thought that the community, those that really wanted water, were going to approach that maybe last summer or last fall, and just hadn't got started. Just a couple of days ago, somebody who wanted water and brought it up to my attention that they wanted to explore a special assessment district or a special taxing district, and I wanted to know if we were in favor of it. And I think the answer to that has always been yes. I think that the immediately subsequent to the referendum, the next legal way, or the only other legal way through the county's rules that you have to build this water project, is do it through a district like that, where the people that want it would end up voting one way or the other to get it. I actually think maybe in our code we're compelled to do one. It doesn't matter if we want to do one or not. If they did petition, yeah, correct. So what I wanted to ask is, Mitch, is there a way that you could outline for this group the process to get a special assessment or special taxing district from today on forward? What do they have to do in our code to get it? I mean, do they need a petition? Do they need an official committee to represent the organizers of an initiative? What does the petition consist of? Does it need 10%, 20%, 50% of the voters? Does the council have to ratify this? Do we need to engage the county in it somewhere? If in fact we decide we want to go forward with it, how long do we have to vote? How many votes does it take to win? Those types of things. I think we should get them the pathway or the outline for it, eventually they're going to have to make a request of the village, is the way I understand it. If they want to use this loan fund, if they want a contribution from the village, if they want to have us interact in any way other than just administratively processing it. So does anybody mind if Mitch puts together an outline, kind of a very high level outline on how to get from where we are today to a special district?
When you say we, define we, because my understanding is a special taxing district, an entity that homeowners create for themselves, not the village.
Yeah, I don't mean well, I guess what I mean is that the homeowners, right? I believe that if the village was going to get involved with this, it would have to be at the request, the official request of the homeowners. I think that if they've got critical mass, they should go through a process, prove to us that it's something they want to explore. And then if we have to, the process is the village needs to be involved. The village would get involved. I'm assuming that the process is that the village needs to be involved administratively, at least. It's got to collect a petition. It's got to send it to a vote, unless the commission do that. I mean, would seem to me almost that it would be the county's special taxing district or special assessment district that would be the right venue. If it involves the village as somebody who needs to administrate it, that's what I mean by we. It may also involve the village, and if the people want to request something more than administrative from the village, like some type of, are we going to construct the project for them? Are we going to manage the construction? Are we going to administer to anything? Do we need local agreements with the county? Are there any financial contributions from the village? They need to make that request. And I think that's the real question. Does the council would have to weigh that request and decide whether we wanted to get involved to the level of their request. What do you think?
Joe, can I make a point?
Yes,
Yossi,
sir.
you remember, Yossi, maybe 4 years ago, we gave Kava the opportunity to use Evelyn Greer, the Leslie Bow Hall, and they had, because across the street, there was a group of homeowners that were setting up a special taxing district.
Right.
Kava had that meeting to be the go-between to help assist those homeowners in the process. She brought the community together. She brought them in and she explained to them, and they had WASD there. They had Durham. They had the water, everybody, the utilities, their bills, what they would be over 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. And then after she set that up with the homeowners, that all the homeowners were clear of what was going to take place. Then they went ahead and sent out the ballot. But so the county helped set up the whole thing. They didn't have any financial obligation or any skin in the game as far as, they were obligated, but they did help the whole process, which I think is good for us if we help the process, but not get into legal binding or financial, agreements, which they didn't. And they went ahead and voted, and they actually voted it down. It was like, it had to be 50+1, and they didn't get 50%. So it got voted down. But that was a pretty informative meeting. I was there. I went there for the 4 or 5 hours, and it was pretty good because they had every agency there explaining exactly what's going to take place and how it would happen.
So Mayor
down
Court,
to the last nickel.
Yes, Shannon.
if the citizens are in fact, going to petition the village, I support what Councilmember Kraft said. I think having Mitch draft a memo so that we understand the pathway puts us ahead of the curve.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's way too early to talk about anything else other than a pathway, because nobody's made any type of request, right? I've not even informally has anybody approached me with the specifics of, hey, this is what we would want the village to be involved with, other than something administrative. So I would assume that if the group knew the process and they decided to get organized, they would eventually meet with they would make a request of the village. I think the council would entertain that request at the time, and Mitch could probably tell us when the appropriate time to make a request is based on the to-do list or the pathway to get from where we are now as this concept that they may have. Yes, Anna.
I have issues again with the pronouns here because I'm not clear who we is. Who is we move through the process? So I understand, and I'm great with Mitch drafts a memo, does not compile, he drafts his memo that lets us know what the process is. He distributes it to us. We then become informed as to what the hypothetical process is. And then what happens to the memo? Who receives this information and in what context? Because again, this is not a special taxing district that the village would be promoting, leading, guiding. There is hypothetically some group of homeowners out there organizing themselves to create a special taxing district through the county, if I understand.
Yes. What I would do is I would give this memo to the person who asked me if what the process would be. And then I would leave it at that. And if they decided to organize themselves further, then they could then follow the pathway or get their own representation to check whether the pathway was correct, and then engage the village in any way they see fit. But to be clear, I don't see this as a village initiative. And we're here to assist and facilitate the solution for this problem. But as far as I'm concerned, like we said, it's not a village. This is a county issue, not a village issue. If we can help our neighbors to accomplish their goal of getting water, however that may be done. Again, Mitch may come back and say they don't petition the city for the village of Pinecrest for this. They petition Miami-Dade County. And if that's the case, then we can instruct them to go to Miami-Dade County and get a special district going, and just let us know what our responsibilities are to facilitate this. And if there are none, that's okay as well. And I almost think there may be none because it's not a village issue.
All right. And then we would be able to distribute this to any interested village resident who had the idea, right? It'd be a little bit like dealing with Durham with the hookups. We have a standard package that we give to people who want to know how to get off with Durham, so to speak. And then we would have this memo and be able to distribute it to anybody who ever asked us, how do you do a special taxing district for water, right?
Yeah, and one of the reasons I'm asking this is after the person asked me the question, I started to look in the charter to figure out maybe there's a clear path in there. And what I saw in the charter was something for a referendum, something for how to initiate an ordinance, but nothing at all about special assessments or taxing districts. And again, that makes sense because we don't typically do these districts, right? Yossi, we've not done them before. We don't do them now. If we're going to get involved, it's only going to be from a very administrative factor. So maybe we don't have.
I think that there's my understanding is, and Mitch will have to confirm it, but my understanding is that the county changed their code like 3 or 4 years ago. And just like the whole special taxing district thing that's happening now at Pinecrest by the Sea and the Gables, that if a special taxing district initiative, is done, at the minimum, the city, because it's within our municipal limits, we have to sign off on it. Like that's my understanding. I don't know what that process is. I know that the one from Pinecrest by the Sea, we did like 3 years ago or 2 years ago, it was just a simple resolution. So at minimum, I think that would be what would be required, but Mitch would have to kind of go over that. I don't know.
Well,
then Mitch would probably be able to detail that in his memo.
I will. The Gables by the Sea was something different because I believe that there had been a special taxing district in existence for some time, and the county had been pushing all of the special taxing districts to be administered by the municipalities. And since that one had 2 separate municipalities, we had to consent to the management or administration of the special taxing district by the city of Coral Gables, and much more of it because it was one district. That administration piece is not a huge burden. It's especially in most of these cases, it's a light burden, but the process for approval of the creation of a special taxing district is still a county process. So there is some municipal involvement. I don't recall offhand whether the municipality has to agree in advance before the county approves the creation of the special taxing district. I would imagine in some cases it does not if it stretches across multiple municipalities. But we will give you the update because, as Yossi said, it was changed a few years ago when the county decided, after having some very embarrassing revelations about its failure to adequately collect and account for monies from one of their special taxing districts, decided that it wished to unburden itself of as many of these special taxing districts as it could. The tax collector still has to collect the taxes. We don't have our own tax collector, but this is this
Joe
definitely was changed a few years ago.
Yes.
Joe, one other thing,
Yes.
it just came to my mind is that, that since at the time Commissioner Cava, Mayor Cava set up her own district, that whole scenario of what they should do and how the taxing district will work and how much they'd pay over a 15 or 20 or 25 year. Maybe it's our new Commissioner Regalano. She should be, maybe we set her up to do that too at Evelyn Greer Park. And if they decide to do their own taxing district, then that kind of leaves us out of it. We'll facilitate it, bring her here. She can have the people from Durham and Wassett, her utility that she's in charge of, and have her, host that meeting and let the people, and it kind of keeps us, away. I mean, I guess another idea that, because really it's her district. I mean, it's her utility, it's her district, and she should be explaining to people how the taxing district work. And she has direct lines to Durham and Wassett and everybody to reach out, and the tax collector, and tell them the price, and this is what it would be, and how long it would take. And we're going to mail out the ballot, and you guys vote, and if you vote yes, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think I when I asked the question, I was unclear after doing the research exactly what it entailed. So I figured I would ask Mitch, and he could let us know the process, and maybe the process includes Pinecrest, and maybe it doesn't. And we can, as a village, just facilitate these neighbors to get going down the right path. I do think they probably need some type of representation other than the village. And I think they would definitely, if it's a purely a county process, at that point in time, they need to hire their own lawyer and to help shepherd them through that. They probably need to do that anyway. Here, I just wanted to give a light outline of where we are today and get to the end, and then wait for them to come back to us or go to whomever and ask us for something which they have not done yet.
I'm in favor of your recommendation, Mayor.
Yep, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, so can I just get real quick, because first we were talking about doing obviously what we've been working on. Then we had Council Member Hokemer, who said to establish a timeline and assign leaders for each component of the WASA lobbying strategy developed by Weiss-Serota. So that
I think that has to go on irrespective of
irrespective
special taxing district. That may be successful, that may be not. They may be on a 1-year timeline or a 10-year timeline.
And I think we've already directed the village attorney to go ahead and do that. So they're working on it. So that was just trying to capture the fact that they were going to, based on our last workshop, that they were going to assign who was going to do what with our lobbying strategy with the county. Mm-hmm. And then now we're doing a develop a report.
No. That's part of our, I don't think that's part of our strategic plan, Yossi. I think
okay.
Just an aside for water. I'm simply asking Mitch to just as a favor to the neighbor who asked what the process is, just a light outline of the process to get a special assessment district done. I mean, it's not a village responsibility. We can't do a special district. We're not going to do a special district for the village. It's going to be a neighbor initiated district. That's their, in my opinion, that's their strategic plan. Our strategic plan is if it stays the way it is today and that doesn't get accomplished, then what are we going to do to get water? And what we're going to get water is try to change the rules so that it no longer requires the individual homeowner to be responsible for putting in the water. That's what the problem. We're going to try to change the rules to make the county commission, the people that own the water system, put in the water. But again, that's likely a longer term process than an individual homeowner banding together with other individual homeowners and getting themselves a special district to put water in or purchasing it themselves. Does that make sense to anybody? Or am I being clear, or is that just confusing?
I totally get it. And then, so to piggyback on that, as whatever's happening out there in the neighborhoods is happening, we're working on the systemic change in the financial and county policy. So we have the lobbying plan that was drafted by Vice Sirota. It's great. We want to now establish an idealized, obviously highly fungible and easily changed, but establish a timeline and assign individuals who are responsible for the components, the component pieces of that lobbying plan, and then create the policy where we do an annual evaluation of where we are in the lobbying plan, what we've been able to advance and get done, have the meetings with the interested stakeholders happened, and do an annual evaluation of where we are in that process, and then adjust the timeline and the leaders assigned to the remaining components. I think it has to be an iterative annual process that's part of our strategic plan and that is accountable to the entire council on a yearly basis in order to generate the momentum to possibly be successful.
So, okay. We captured, actually, I captured that for this year. And then obviously next year we'll change and tweak that to be like an annual review of where we stand in that process.
Yeah, that's how I see it playing out.
Okay. All right. 4.3, further develop educational initiatives at Pinecrest Gardens. This is ongoing to me. This is, you know, we have a environmental education coordinator that she's constantly looking to obviously expand our educational initiatives at Pinecrest Gardens. So I don't know if
Xavier's now got the new education component of his initiatives as the artist in residence. So I think that's now part of operations.
Are we good with taking this out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We already talked about the creating the comprehensive parks and master plan that evaluates current facilities and identifies service level considerations for possible future acquisition. I believe that's scheduled to be done by this year. Okay, the mayor had suggested construct the 67th Avenue shared use path as one of our long-term strategic goals.
I think it's a great idea. We're at the point where all sorts of multi-use paths around us are actually being constructed and funded. And we have at 67th Avenue the opportunity to join up with the Underline, Ludlam Trail, and creating that bisecting north-south. The community on 67th the time has come.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we could be geographically placed as one of the areas in the county that connects to just about everywhere. And if you look at our position between the old Cutler Trail, the trail down the busway, you've got the Ludlam Trail that's coming and the Underline. So you'd be able to get from the airport to Homestead and the zoo, based from anywhere in Pinecrest. So it's a good piece of connecting. If we can get it to work, who knows?
Okay, I just added design and construct the 67th Avenue shared use path to create a link with the Snapper Creek Trail that connects to the Underline.
Yeah, it also connects to the old Cutler Trail.
And the old Cutler Trail and the Ludlam Trail.
And so then what we would end up having would be, if we ever get 104th Street done, you've got that kind of like a ladder across the community. You've got an east-west connection at 104th on the northern boundary. You've got an east-west connection on 136th on the southern boundary. You've got the Metro Rail that runs on our western boundary, Old Cutler that runs on our eastern boundary, and then one that drops down to the center and connects with Ludlam and, again, the Underline and those types of things. And then we're pretty much gridded out from a bicycle perspective, I would imagine.
So what's the timeline for construction, for completion of construction?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we're working on 104th Street now, right?
No, we're working on Kendall, 104th. We have
Oh.
designed, but it went down the tubes. If you guys
Yeah,
want to
sorry.
dust off that design and look at it, but we have a shared use path design for 104th, but we kind of, that council killed that.
I'm sorry, we're looking at Kendall. So that's what I meant instead of 104th.
Okay.
So I don't, we're done after we're done that. Let's play it by, I would say that's just a, put
To
it out.
construct that, can we put it out 5 years?
5 years is fine with me.
Because that's
3
gonna take a while to come up with the funding for that anyway.
Mhm.
Okay. Collaborate, okay, this one was from Katie, from Councilmember Abbott. Collaborate with the Youth Advisory Council to develop recreational programs for teens and other teen-oriented initiatives. I don't know, I know she's picking up.
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to add something for our teens. Sorry, my son's getting in the car. It's, of course, not the ideal time. But basically, I just want to kind of, have our youth on everybody's mind. We do so much for our seniors. There's a lot of programming for them. And I want to keep the youth on everybody's radar, especially now. This has been a horrendous year, particularly with mental health. I think there's some initiatives that we can take on. I'm open to suggestions, but, make them just as much a priority as everybody else. I think they're, 1/3 of our population? And just to, think about things that we can do for them.
I agree.
I mean, even more specific, do we want to get more specifically and call them teens? Because I think we do a lot for children. And I think the last.
Exactly.
Teenagers.
So collaborate with Youth Advisory Council to develop recreational programs for teens and other teen-oriented initiatives
Yeah.
aimed at children ages, 12?
12 to 18, like middle and high school.
Yeah. Yeah. 12 to 18 is good.
And that's a shorter term. Can we do that by 2022?
Yeah, how about we change the verb there to design in collaboration with the Youth Advisory Council, or design and implement, so that it's something we can say, we did the design, it's happening, it's done, check, right?
Correct.
Okay. Design in collaboration with the Youth Advisory Council and implement recreational programs for teens and other teen-oriented initiatives aimed at for children. I'm just gonna put for children ages. Okay? All right.
Really,
Thank you.
can we flip, I'm sorry, can we flip the clause? In collaboration with the Youth Advisory Council, comma, design and implement recreational programs? For some reason, it just reads so awkwardly right now.
Recreational programs.
Right, like, yeah. For teens and other teen-oriented.
Right? Design in collaboration.
In collaboration.
Collaboration with
Oh,
the
in
Youth
collaboration.
Council, design and implement recreational programs and initiatives for.
Collaborate with the Youth Advisory Council to design and implement recreational programs and initiatives for teens ages 12, right?
Sure,
Or for children ages.
I guess children. They'll hate being called children, but that's
All
okay.
right, we're not.
Residents.
Residents. But the problem is, I'm afraid if we say residents, then the question is, well, do they live here? Do they live in Coral Gables or Palmetto Bay? And
It's okay. They
either, right? Yeah.
You could say residents and students.
Well,
Residents and students.
Yeah. Also, I mean, this is policy, not law, but my daughter, who's a student at Gulliver, thinks that, you should be promoting, she's actually working with Michelle on this, promoting youth engagement, and that youth should be broadly construed to be everyone from middle school up to college, because you do have college students living at home.
That's true.
Okay. 6, this was another one from Councilmember Abbott. Promote community-wide health initiatives through events and wellness programs that focus on post-pandemic return to normal.
Yeah.
So this is something I briefly talked to Robert about. Just when all this is over, and we all want to get back to normal now, right? But we all want to get back to some semblance of what we were before. I think we're all interested in health initiatives. So Robert and I were just briefly talking about some things that we can do. We came up with some, I don't know if he's on the call if he remembers, it was like, run away from COVID, and we have some kind of 5K or just some kind of initiative to signal the end of COVID, signal, the resiliency of our community, and the ability just to get back to normal and to promote health.
So is it just one event that you want, or just a combination of events that really focus on a return to normal with that kind of messaging?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to discussion. It's, I don't have anything firm in my mind. It's just something that Robert and I discussed briefly. Does anyone else have any?
I mean, I think
input?
we're attacking it in the strategic plan. We're attacking it from various areas. We've already said we're going to do something for restaurants. We've said we're going to do something for local retail. I think we're going to, clearly here in parks and community, we want to do something in general for the health and wellness and resiliency of the community. I think we're hitting it in a gazillion different ways in the strategic plan. And I think it's good to be specific.
So he wrote a note to me. It was a 5K and fitness event that celebrated things going back to normal. So it was to actually do one community event that was, wellness, health kind of focus that celebrates a return to normal.
On, say, like a large boat with a sign above his head that says mission accomplished, right? Kind of like Bush, right? George Bush, no, sorry, might have overshot with that one, never mind.
No, that's good. I like it. I remember.
Remember that one? Am I alluding to something that nobody else remembers?
Yep. Remember, it was great. He flew on an airplane, didn't he? He flew in a jet.
Yeah.
That day. Landed on the aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. 10 years later, there we were, still accomplishing the mission.
I think we're still there. Didn't we just bomb some?
Yeah. Actually, we can make Joe drag his own boat out of the marina, park it in the middle of town, and drape bunting on it that says mission accomplished.
Okay.
We'll have a parade.
How do you like this? Develop and implement a community event that promotes health and wellness in a post-pandemic world, celebrating a return to normal.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was going to happen.
Anniversary parade. We're not doing anything for our, monumental year. We might as well celebrate normal.
You think it's going to be this year or next year?
Let's put it 2022, because let's be honest, we're hoping that it's this summer. And what if it's,
or at least fiscal year 22, right? Fiscal year 21, 22. Okay. Okay, we got 10 more minutes. Maybe we can finish this one section. Collaborate with FPL to bring about more electric underground projects throughout the village. This was Councilmember Del Prado. I didn't get a chance to talk to her in anticipation of this the morning. On this one, the last I heard, and the mayor, you have the most contact with the people at leadership at FPL, was that they anticipate that over 20 years, the village will have everything undergrounded. Did I hear that right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if they would tell you that, but they would tell you that they plan on advancing it much further than it is today. I like this one. I had it on my list too.
Okay, so is the verbiage good the way we have it currently?
Well, you know what's funny about FPNL is I don't really think they care to collaborate with anybody.
I think
That was my thinking when I saw that.
I don't think the thing is, I think we did the first step, which was getting them to talk to us and getting them to put us on the pilot list, right? And getting them to start. The way I understand the process, though, we have very, very little role to play. So they take the data from these pilot programs, they go back to the PSC, they prove to the PSC that the expense is compensated
Offsets.
on the offset on the other side by saving money for their investors. Their stated objective is to have their FPL's entire service area in the state of Florida undergrounded within 30 years. So to the extent that we can influence that process, it would be very much a lobbying exercise with the PSC as opposed to with FPL. If there were any lobbying exercise, it would be sort of to get ourselves to the top of the list, as opposed, and be at the first parts that get undergrounded rather than the last parts that undergrounded. But because we didn't design, nor can we participate in designing the algorithm that they use to tranche out and prioritize the undergrounding segments, I just don't know that we could ever know that we were being successful. We're so far removed from like the internal procedure, is what I'm saying.
So I know anecdotally that based on my conversations with the people that serve, our reps from FPL, that what drives the formula and the reason and how they pick, it's based on intermittent outages, how reliable the electricity is to certain grids. And inadvertently, when we planted a lot of trees right under the wires, it actually created the situation where these residents are getting intermittent outages, so that those grids got, rose to the top of the list. So I wonder if there's any kind of active situation where maybe residents, the presumption is that they know when there's intermittent outages in areas, and that they monitor that it doesn't involve, complaints. Because if it involves a complaint driven process that then brings these projects up to the top of the list, then I think we should try to focus our residents' energies to reporting even the slightest intermittent outage. Because if that's in any way plays a role in their decision making, then we can probably guide people to do that more than maybe they do now. Maybe they just live with intermittent outage and don't call FPL to report it every single time it happens.
So my understanding is that it's not actually based on outages, it's based on the cost of maintenance.
Gracias.
Right? So it's not, they frankly, I don't want to be too cruel to FPL, but they really don't care whether or not people have reliable electrical service. That's not what they're using to determine where to start the undergrounding. It's the cost involved in repairing and maintaining the lines. So Pinecrest is an expensive place for them because we have all these trees, and they're constantly having to send crews in to repair, right? And that's how they're going to use the math to justify the investment.
So the more trees, the better. That's really how we.
I was going to say, so if we really want to get to the top of the list, we need to stop trimming trees. We need to instruct our residents to stop trimming their trees. We need to instruct our residents to plant large trees, as many as possible, under the lines, everywhere, right? Yeah. Drive your cars into the wooden poles, knock them over every time you can. Just make it as expensive as possible for FPL to operate in Pinecrest, and then their algorithm will push us to the top. I'm okay with that. We can do that if you want. You have to return the cherry picker though.
Yeah, so we got to get our, does FPL permit would allow I'm sorry, I gotta get the words right. Do they look at what we're planning under those lines?
No,
Or, but we've changed our tree planting to conform with their standards, right? Whatever the right tree in the right place standards or whatever it is. So when we
they had, but I kind of, once I realized how our having trees under that actually helps us, I kind of pulled back a little bit on that. Because I think in reality, inadvertently, that played in our favor. The fact that we were trying to hide those lines and camouflage them by planting big trees that would eventually grow around them, even if they came in and periodically pruned them. That was the reason why back when we first incorporated, we purposely put stuff in there. And so in the last year, when we realized that had actually helped us, I kind of, we pulled back on right tree, right place kind of thing. We just put trees wherever,
whatever to do with FPL seems to be working. We got a much better, I mean, I would hate to call it collaborative, but it is much more collaborative than it ever was before. So I'll take it at this point, right?
So do we want to keep this in as a goal, or just because I hadn't had a chance to talk to Council Member Del Prado, so I just don't know that there's really anything for us to do here when it comes to FPL, because they're kind of like autonomous, really, unless we're going to take an active lobbying role with the PSC to try to increase the electric underground projects, the timeline, speed it up. I don't know.
But you know what's funny is FPL can't even give us a timeline. And if you ask them for a map of where these things are going to happen, I don't think they can give us a map. And so we don't know what the hell's going on. The only thing we know is that we've got like 20 miles more than we had 4 years ago.
We have the pilot program they're currently going to do here. We do have those maps. Right. And like I said, what I've heard is that they actually anticipate doing the entire village over the next 20 years.
Correct. So
that's what I've heard.
That's assuming that they get the data that they are sure they're going to get from these pilot programs, present it to the PSC, and then get permission to finish this ambitious 20 to 30 year statewide plan.
I also thought that their whole process in doing these pilot programs with the PSC was to show and convince them to allow FPL to increase the fees so that they can pay for upgrades like undergrounding projects and recover those costs from the ratepayers.
That is correct. And over the next 2 years, so they've swapped out the guy who used to be the person who was hired by the legislature to advocate for the residents in front of the PSC. So he got caught up in a political scrum. He's out. They hired another guy who's closely tied to the energy industry to now take on that role. And it's very, very likely over the next 2 years that the PSC will, if we're reading the tea leaves right, approve I don't want to say significant, a largish rate increase. One of the ways that they're justifying the largest rate increase is because they're investing, they claim, these millions and millions of dollars in the undergrounding. So, the idea that it's free, once again, begs the lie. Somebody's paying for it somewhere. They're getting it coming or going. But I would argue that the benefit to Pinecrest of having us undergrounded over the next 20 years is worth slightly higher electric bill.
So I don't understand or I'm not privy to the institutional history on this, but it's clear to me that Pinecrest got lucky. So I guess my point in that recommendation, it was a wish list. Mayor suggested we put it all out there. So to the extent that we got lucky and that we can replicate how we got lucky, I think we should continue to do that.
I think that is do what we're doing, right? Don't yell at FPL, don't sue FPL, don't call them out every time we have a public forum to call them out and threaten them. Just like we've kind of been doing. We just interact with them like normal human beings, and good things happen. It's not luck. I think luck is a residue of design. It's just not antagonizing.
Right. Let's continue to be gracious hosts for FPL. How's that?
Good partners. We're going to be good partners with FP&L, and we can serve both their needs and our needs instead of.
Certainly been a good-
Can I remove that goal though? I think that,
Yeah,
okay. All right, and we are at 12:30, Mr. Mayor, if you want to stop here.
Yeah, unless you want to get through this page, I'm good with stopping.
It's up to you.
There's only so much strategic planning one can take in a day.
I know, we're almost there. We're getting close to the end. We only have,
Oh, that we've really been
Yeah.
going fast today. This is great.
we did good today. Today was a good work day. So I think one more meeting, we should be able to do everything. And if you all look at the outcomes, I'll send the latest draft of this. Give me a couple days to kind of fix this a little bit. I'll send the latest draft of the project of the document. And if we can, everyone's given me their thoughts on goals, objectives. So now if we could just think about the outcomes when you look at these categories. So let me just, I'll send the latest draft, and you'll know where we stop based on the fact that the numbers here stop and that we don't have more dates. So you'll know that's where we stand in the process.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
Good. This is time to think about what we've done and correct it if it's going in the wrong direction.
right. Okay, so do you guys want to pick a date now so we can get that on the calendar?
Sure.
Sure. Wednesday, the 10th, Monday, the 15th, Friday, the 19th.
We have a workshop on the 11th, right?
We have a council workshop on LDRs on the 11th.
Right,
And we have a meeting on the 9th. Oof,
right.
yeah.
Let's not do next week then. I'm canceled out. 15th or 16th?
Either works for me. I just, on the 15th, I have something at noon. So as long as we wrap up by noon, I'm okay.
Yeah, 16th is good.
Okay.
Wait, which date? 15th
The
or 16th?
16th, the 16th of March.
Yeah, that's good. Because the 15th, there's the FLC conference. I don't know if anyone's doing it.
Do you all want to do again from 9 to 12? Or do you want to push and try to get everything done and give ourselves a little bit extra time?
How much more do you think we got to do?
I don't know how long it'll take you all to go through the rest, but if we can just, I guess we could always. I would just suggest that maybe till 2 o'clock you can block that off, and if we finish earlier, we finish earlier.
From 9 to 2?
Or is that too long? If not, then just till noon, and then we'll regroup.
How
Or
about
from 9 to 1.
There you go. Compromise?
Yeah,
One,
let's
9
do
to
9
1.
to 1.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have I'm hosting a webinar, an educational webinar at 9 on the 16th. I am happy to have Roger or Marlon attend in my stead. I think they would be able to do just as good
Yeah, that's
as I
fine.
would at mostly listening. Most
Okay.
of the
Yeah,
That's fine with
okay.
us. Neat.
I'll have somebody in there, and then there's the LDR workshop on the 11th. That doesn't appear on my calendar. Was an invite sent out for that?
I'm not sure.
And what is the hour?
A placeholder that I put on there.
for which one, Mitch? Which one were you asking?
It was mentioned earlier in LDR's workshop on March 11th.
That's at 9 o'clock,
Okay,
and we have it set up from 9 to 11.
okay.
And the Steve should have already reached out to all of you to just have meetings in anticipation of that workshop. So at least you've been briefed, so you know what we're going to be talking about.
Mitch, you can always send Roger and Marlon. They're both delightful people.
It's almost like how much kids love when there's a substitute teacher.
Yeah. It's not for the.
No substitute.
Yeah, or having the good babysitter rather than the bad one. That was the mean babysitter. Why don't you get the nice babysitter?
My favorite Roger story is the first time anybody ever contacted me about a mysterious coyote. Roger was still working for Commissioner Suarez, and I honestly just had a brain fart. I couldn't even figure out whether coyotes actually existed in Miami-Dade. And so I emailed Roger, and I swear it was 9:00 at night. Do coyotes live in Florida? Like, not even expecting a response. And I swear 8 minutes later, I got links to like the FWC page and 3 paragraphs from him about coyotes and their natural range. It was hysterical. He's now one of my favorite people because of the coyote incident.
He's developed a great expertise in wildlife.
All right. I think we're good,
All right.
Mayor. Thank you all for all your work.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Joseph. Take care.
Enjoy the
Take care.